We're gonna have a conversation with Commie, okay? We're gonna go to his server. Okay, bye, fella. Okay, bye. Yeah, so we're gonna go over here.
Hey,
Okay.
hey,
Alright.
how you doing, brother?
That was not the voice I was expecting.
Oh, hi.
Is that your natural speaking voice?
uh, yeah. Unless it does something sound off.
No, that's not the voice I was expecting.
Oh,
In a good way. So,
all right. How you doing?
I'm alive.
Hey, I mean, fuck, that's better than some of us, huh?
What is your Twitch channel?
So it's the same as I've been chatting with the NOK Life, AN, and then OK with the AY, and then Life.
Okay.
I'm just throwing up a bunch of.
Okay.
I'm just throwing up
Yep, there
a
you
bunch
are.
of hoopla. Bunch of hoopla. There we go.
I like how you have I like how you have the picture of me deadlifting right there. That's nice.
Yeah. It's like a app that like kind of just takes your profile picture and kind of like puts it right next to mine. Pretty pretty nice.
Okay. Do
I'm
they do,
just
do they do the light thing when we're speaking? Is that what that
yeah, they
is?
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just making sure everything's properly set up on both my desktops here.
All right. Well, while you're doing that, I'm gonna step away really quick to use the can while you're finishing setup.
Of course, of course. Follow. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Okay. Ah. All right.
Your face is a grump. Oh shit.
Stabs. Where's face? Now am I? What the hell?
Fuck, I've been appropriated, bro.
I guess.
We're wild times we're living in.
Ugh.
So how was your stream before all this?
Uh, nothing, nothing miraculous to report. Nothing in particular of interest, other than perhaps Twisted making a bunch of AI music of
Yeah.
debatable quality.
I I'm to blame for this.
Okay.
Yeah, I went on to Kairos' stream and then was kind of trolling him with like diss tracks, but then I made some like positive ones just to, balance it out. Don't want to be like fully negative.
Mm-hmm.
And Nader asked for it, so I gave him the link to go make AI stuff. Made one for like PBG. I think he made a couple for himself and some other people as well and posted them in a few discords.
Yeah.
Hey, Grumple saying sup the stack. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. All right. So, do you want to do introductions first and kind of just like small talk, like who you are, who I am, kind of like some general beliefs before we like deep dive into anything?
Yeah, that's generally how these things go about, so I see no problem with that.
All right, all right. If you want to go first,
Sure. So, my name is Zach. Uh, there's a lot that I could potentially go into as far as my life and descriptions of me, and as far as creating the human interest element. I think for the
mhm.
purposes of this conversation, perhaps what might be most interesting to people is I was born and raised in Tacoma, Washington, and I grew up around people who were extremely left leaning my entire life. Uh, despite that, despite growing up in that environment, I've always been right of center. And now I live in Mississippi, moved away from the state because the politics just got egregiously bad. And I'm an author and a content creator and a gym rat. And you can ask me just about anything you want if there's any holes in there you have a burning need to fill.
Grumple is asking if your taint is waxed. I don't know if you feel comfortable with that, but he says it's a big deal status wise.
He's referencing lore from my channel. Ignore him.
Okay. All right, all right. So you're religious, Christian, if I'm correct, yeah?
Yep.
And you identify as conservative.
Um, in order, I am a Christian constitutional conservative.
Okay. Now, would you say that conservative is both economically and socially, or are you more like moderate when it comes to social policy and more conservative when it comes to economic, or could you vice versa, or whatever it is?
Not quite either of those. So I'm conservative in that I believe that a more right wing prescription is usually the right approach for most situations. Um, but I also acknowledge some things that a lot of, classic conservative figures would not. So I acknowledge there's some value in social safety nets to a certain extent. Um, I acknowledge that there's a certain amount of social freedom that has to be allowed if you actually hold to conservative principles. Um, we would have to go issue by issue to really get my specific thoughts because there's a lot of nuance with a lot of things. But in general, the reason I'm comfortable with the conservative label is because generally my principles align with what people call the conservative movement.
All right, yeah, that's understandable. Um, and very well said. Is there anything else you want to add on to it?
We'll see. Not at the moment.
All right, all right. Well, I'm Kay. In OK Life, I do political streaming. Uh, well, I grew up. Well, I was born in Las Vegas, but I grew up in a small town in Nevada, and yeah, Nevada at the time was a very conservative state. It's now a blue state. But I would like to still consider it purple because it can flip flop depending on who you're talking to, where you are, and voting. It goes red and blue, kind of back and forth. I've lived all over the place, including Japan, which is, I would say, a economically more left-leaning economy than the U.S., but way more socially conservative than the United States. So I lived a little bit there, and I actually might be taking another contract out there to go live again. I've lived in Canada, so super left. And then I've lived in Washington as well. So doing contracts and some government work out there. So I've kind of been all over. I've spent some time in other countries. I wouldn't say that I lived in those ones, but the ones I just named were ones I've lived in. Ones I've stayed like extended amounts of time in. We're talking like Vietnam, Peru, Mexico. So I've been a little bit of all over. My family is a religious conservative family, and I grew up more or less, I would say, moderate right. Or like if I were to put a label of where I think the spectrum is now for my old self, it would be moderate right. But I think back then that would just be like within the Overton window, I'd be just considered a centrist by most. I didn't have any strong opinions about anything. Like I didn't think a moment about like gay people. So I didn't have any negative views of gay people, but I also wasn't like an advocate for any of the plights that were going on. I never really thought much about the economy other than I think that people should be free to do what they wanted to do and I should be free to do what I wanted to do. But I always knew that there was some injustice, like looking around in the world. I was like, this is kind of fucked up. And I just would kind of meld that to people were stupid and government is stupid. And that was basically a long for most of my life, that is kind of where I was up until recently. I think 2016 was a big change for a lot of people where they started getting more and more political. For me in 2016, I I was like bouncing all over the place from state to state, then eventually country to country, and was on my own and got to experience a little bit of life from many different cultures and many different economic status places. So I felt like I got a little bit of good sampling of the world during that time. And I started to feel myself being opened up to new ideas. I always kind of looked at communism and socialism as one of those things of like, all right, there's some good ideas there, but obviously the results speak for themselves kind of thing. And like, I don't like, I've had a growing discontent with capitalism and how it treated me and my mother. My mother is one of the hardest workers I've ever known. She works with her hands kind of person, you know? And she's always had to provide for me and my brother. And she always did her best. And while now she's living a decent life, I think how much she had to struggle and how much she suffered and the reward that she got back from how much she gave into the community, there was something obviously wrong there. And then she passed that hard working ethic to me, where I was always the one that would show up early for work. I would always try to volunteer more time, do the best I could, give my everything to work. And it pretty much chewed me up and spit me out, where work didn't like care about cutting pay, lowering raises, or not even giving them those the raises that they promised for so long. No social like safety nets, no nothing of value really getting added. Just like, oh, if you work hard, we'll take advantage of you, and if you don't work hard, well, that's just the standard, right? So I saw that the amount of time and effort I was putting into life was damaging my mental health, my physical health, and I was getting nowhere with it. So I knew that something had to change. And unlike a lot of people where they're like, oh, I saw Hassan Piker and stuff like that, I actually kind of started with the basic theory where I was like curious. I was like, well, you know, it's so taboo. Everybody's like, ah, Marx was this, Marx was that. So I started reading through a little bit of Marx. I started looking into what Engels had to say. And then I started bouncing all over different economic theories. And then I went to YouTube and I was like, YouTube's a modern tool for modern ideas. These are all old and outdated. What do people say now? And then that's when I started finding people like Hakeem and Second Thought. Eventually, of course, Hassan, though I have huge mixed feelings about Hassan and just other names, right? And eventually, the more I kind of dabbled into it, the more I was okay with wearing the label and associating it with my beliefs. Though there's a lot of asterisks, and you know, nobody is like, it's a spectrum on everything, right? Like, I'm not going to agree with communists on everything, right? And socialists aren't going to agree with me on everything. But I think that if people heard what I want out of life, you can attach a clearly socialist anarcho value to it, or at least I believe so. So that's me.
Okay. So, I guess my question would be, with all of that as a prefix,
Hmm.
what are you hoping to get out of this conversation? You invited me here,
Hmm.
and it's very clear that we have extremely disparate beliefs on a great deal of things based on the uh, context that I've received so far. So, what exactly are you hoping to accomplish with this conversation?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not like planning to get hey, you have to be communist. That's the only way that life is going to work or anything. I'm very much about building bridges. I like to use the Sunday political format that I've been developing to kind of get voices from all over and find one the agreements that we have, because while you can have people that wildly disagree with a lot of stuff, like Aristotle and I mean, you would think that's I think you know Aristotle, correct?
Aristotle Online?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he threatened to bot raid my account and completely destroy my online platform.
Really?
Yeah,
That's unfortunate.
I did a whole video about it on YouTube. I literally the screenshots and everything. Like that guy is persona non grata with me in my community.
All right. Well, then, X on that. I was going to say he is somebody that came on who I have many disagreements with, and like we were at each other and hated each other, but we were able to come to somewhat of an understanding. Nader is a good example. He's a mod in your community. He's a respected member in my community, both on my stream and on my Discord. Completely different views, but he has said that he respects me and that he's come on to my panels to have discussions about America, economics, and other things. So I think that's the major goal, is just having some bridges be built and there being a level of understanding, because I think life is all about understanding and experiences. And to get anything done, we need to at least agree on some common terminologies and a common direction for society. And that requires us to at least acknowledge what the problems are. If we keep on dividing each other just based off labels and not actually hear each other out on what about the nitty gritty of these details, then we're just going to get nowhere. So I think it's more about not converting you into communism or socialism, but at least making it not a bad word, and at least being like, okay, I can see the values of this, and this is where I agree with you, and this is where I disagree with you. Because once you get that, you can actually start making some real progress when it comes to change.
Well, I can tell you right now that you are not going to make me. You are not going to change my perception on communism or socialism, but I am open to allowing you to try.
Hey, I mean, you don't even need to come out of it now. I think the best type of debates are the ones that leave seeds that kind of grow over time, and then both people kind of retrospectively look at it and go, huh, I see what they were saying. Just layer down in life, right? On this or that. So, but I'm willing to go into this, right? Open mind on both sides and see what we get out of it. If not for us, then at least the communities get to engage, because it's not just about us, it's about our communities as well.
Agreed with that, yeah.
Yeah. So, do you want to start with what you dislike, or do you want to start with what I like? I'm down for either or.
I would like to hear your case for communism.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So, I want to preface a few things about communism. Is that I think that communism does not work if it's forced, and I do not think that communism, along with authoritarianism, is a good solution. That if you're going to have something that is built off of cooperation, an economic model built off of cooperation amongst people, then this is not something that you can force. You can't force something and expect people to willingly cooperate, right? And be willing to have such good faith within the community. And I think authoritarianism and the centralization of power absolutely corrupts. And throw in communism in there, and you're going to have a real bad mix. And I think this is mistakes that we've seen with the USSR and other. China is a good example as well, and some other communist, quote unquote,
Every
party. Go ahead. Sorry.
every communist regime.
Yeah, I'm willing to say everyone that we've seen like sprout out like that. So that's like the first thing, is that with communism, we got to I know that a lot of people are going to be like the USSR and all this stuff, and I do have a little bit of a defense for the economic side of it, but I think that you're playing with fire if you're going to introduce a centralized authority and force it onto people. So with communism, you need it to be a consensual transition and typically decentralized on a smaller scale. But here are some of the aspects I like about communism is that with communism, we're talking in socialism. Let me ask you real quick, just before, do you consider them the same thing or do you have a distinction for both of them? So that way we're at least working with some similar definitions.
Socialism is the gateway drug to communism.
Okay, sure, we can work with that. So with socialism and communism, we're talking about a model of cooperation amongst people where the workers own uh, the means of production and distribution. I think this is generally a more good idea because the workers
Greetings,
typically, in my
Deerfire.
experience from every job I've ever had, uh, are the ones that actually know what they're doing and know the process of how to run a business, make a profit from a business, and produce the product that is being sold. While top managers, CEOs, and higher ups on it typically are micromanaging and make decisions that aren't always in the best interest. Sometimes they think they can chase short-term profits that hurt long-term stability. And the problem with this is that with a CEO or the board of directors, they have a lot of capital already built in the system. So if something fails for them, they can always sell assets and recoup the loss and move on. While the workers, usually that job is your whole life, and it's very detrimental for the average American just to lose your job and try to seek for another job. These are huge consequences. So the worker typically always has an incentive to keep a business afloat, while CEOs can play a little bit more with fire since they have a lot more breathing room. The other thing I like about the model is about. Oh, thank you for the follow. Thank you for the follow. Another thing that I like to point out is that um, the opportunity cost that's being lost when people are struggling. So even if we're not like communism isn't everything, but if you play with socialism a bit and you get to socialize some services such as education, you can make a case that if we socialize education and everybody has a hand in education, you have more educated people, which could decrease crime. You have more skilled labor. It can drive a better economy. And then you have workers that if a college is free, you're not penalized for trying to shift to the economic needs of the country. So as technology rapidly advances, you might need to switch drastically from one occupation to another. And if the penalty for a college is being super expensive, you might have a lot of people that just can't afford that transition, or if they do, you're basically punishing them and putting an economic burden on them. So that's just one example, but then you can look at the efficiency of socializing like road services and how that guarantees us some good roads, or if you socialize healthcare, that can guarantee a base level of healthy workers, which is going to in turn mean healthy society and a healthy worker, which is going to produce more. So I think there's a good case to be made of how these can be economic pluses. And then also, if we look at co-ops and things like that, you can see that there has been successful co-ops both in the U.S., outside the U.S. In the U.S., I think the one around where I live that's super big is REI Co-op. There's also Winco, and places like that who are able to bring prices down and provide some really good relief. And then the final point that I just want to hammer on is that with capitalism, there seems to be a growing trend of compromising innovation to secure profit. So when you need something to be changed for the good of a lot of people, but it's not profitable, the incentive isn't there. So therefore, there's a bigger pushback. So the free market really isn't working in that case. Some good examples would be like, well, we should have pivoted to renewable energy, nuclear energy, electric cars, things like this quite a long time ago. But because of the capital owners of oil companies, they've been able to lobby successfully to prevent and hinder the growth of these industries, which would have made America a way financially more successful country. And it just would have been better, not only from a financial, but from health and of the planet and local communities perspective as well. And another good example would be like iPhones and stuff that are built to break after a certain amount of time. If you build something really good that works and is not replaceable, then you lose out on money. So there's a capitalist incentive to build in bad
You're talking
products.
about plant senescence. I'm familiar with it.
Yeah. So those would just be like the major things that I think are addressed under a communist slash socialist viewpoint. Though I will admit that I don't think everybody needs to be communist or socialist. I just think it needs to be allowed to live and thrive in a country without being, artificially crushed or shut down. So,
Well, where can you give me an example of communism being crushed inside the borders of the U.S. that isn't like individual prosecutions during the Red Scare?
outside of that, I can't really give you an example of the boot coming down, but I can, as somebody who is trying to work on creating a co-op, tell you that it is very, very inefficient the way that the laws work, and it pretty much incentivizes you not to do any type of profit sharing or co-op. Just from it's possible, but the legal codes still are not built for said systems. And then when it comes to land insurance and things like that, it's just not caught up. Obviously, because we've been a capitalist society for so long, with communism being demonized, these systems really haven't caught up. But in some places, they are. I think Virginia has a very, or West Virginia maybe, has a very good land laws that allow like communist communes to exist, which is why you see like a bunch prop up in this like red state.
I'm gonna pitch you something. I was planning to go a little bit more Socratic method during the course of this conversation, but the way it's gone has not lended itself very well to that. So I'm gonna pitch you something and see what you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
What if I were to tell you that you're not actually a communist, you are just a person who has spotted legitimate critiques of the capitalist system and
Mm-hmm.
has turned to communism as a convenient, dare I say, comforting solution instead of investigating further towards long-term solutions for the existing system?
I am open to hearing arguments about that, but I would say just off of face value that I think that's a incorrect assessment because a part of my journey was defending capitalism as much as I can since, clearly a lot of people have lived and prospered under capitalism. So naturally, and being born into it, I was naturally predisposed to defend it as much as I can. Well, what if we do this? What if we do that? I think the terminology is capitalism with guardrails. A lot of people call it. And I don't think this is a bad system, and I do think you're correct that most communists and socialists do fall under that. That if there was no pressures under the flaws of our current capitalist system, and instead they had a system more akin to like the Norwegian social democracy, that most people would instantly drop it. Which I'm down for us going into that direction. And I think I'm not going to fight people that say that we go there, but I think I'd always fight for a bit of communism and socialism because I do think that socializing certain aspects of the economy is just objectively better. And I think that people should have the right to have communes and stuff. And I think that's a proper way. Like for
Okay.
me personally, I would like to live in a commune. Like my ultimate goal would to live in a commune where your needs are met first, your wants are met second, and then you trade your excess to other communes or the larger society third, right? But I think that outside of that, we should have a mixed economy that leans heavily into left policies that uh, have been proven to work.
Okay. Several things about that. One, you've misread the foundational source of my pitch to you.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. The foundational source of my pitch to you is not. I'm not sure what you thought it was, but here's what it really is. Everything you're saying, there is a um, ethical, moral, and fairly straightforward fix that can be easily legislated that will fix every problem in capitalism you described. So I'm just going to go down the list.
Hmm.
Your mother's lack of reward in her job. Okay, I came up with this one a few days ago, and I think it's a pretty good idea. If you create a tax incentive that encourages companies to regularly give their bottom 50% of earners a raise, and they can take that directly off their tax bill for however many years. You can play with the numbers and figure out what works best for the companies and what works best for the economy in terms of make sure there's enough tax collection. But that would basically single-handedly destroy wage stagnation. Problem solved. Second of all, you've complained a lot, and it's a legitimate complaint. Don't think I'm using that word in a disparaging connotation. It's a legitimate complaint. You've complained a lot about nepotism and nepotism-esque practices that happen inside of the market. You've complained about protectionism from the government, the incestuous nature of government's relationship with companies. All of those complaints are legitimate. The amount of protectionism that goes back and forth from the government to big corporations is frankly completely unacceptable. It is not what the Founding Fathers intended, and it's fairly easy to legislate away, assuming you have a legislative body who is willing to do it, and a justice system that is willing to actually enforce the law. As we have observed in the last 4 years, that does not happen under left-wing governance really at all. Also doesn't happen under crony capitalists pretending to be Republicans. When it comes to the swamp creature's a swamp creature regardless of the letter next to their name, and there's a lot of issues with swamp creatures. Those problems can be fixed with constitutional amendments limiting terms in government, limiting the amount of power of government in various ways that were not included in the original Constitution. Term limits, making sure that bills are single subject, restricting bills to a certain word or page count so that they have to be written in plain and concise language so that they are digestible by the common man, so that the common man does not become detached from his politics. Returning senators to being stated on by state politicians instead of having them be voted on directly by the people. Returning the vote to landowners is a solution that could potentially have some benefit. And that's all of that is not only doable, but advisable based on my analysis of the situation. Then you talk about the last thing that I can remember that I want to hit on before I pass the mic back is you talked about some of the successful left-wing type policies that exist in other countries. And here's why that is not a applicable case study that you can one-to-one put on the U.S. For one, we do not have the demographics, and while I think that demographics is destiny is sort of a internet talking point that gets thrown around like magical, I win the argument confetti, it does regardless have quite a bit of truth to it. And those policies work in countries like Norway and Denmark and the Scandinavian countries because they have social and demographic homogeneity. At least they did before the mass migration agenda. And so their systems were not overstressed because the populace had a common united interest, a common united ethic, and everyone could get along. And that goes a long way towards making any kind of social system functional. When you do not have that kind of homogeny, you need a system that is still fair to everyone but allows people to compete within the confines of a just system. And there is no just competition in communism by definition because things are forcefully redistributed. And by the way, I have a problem with your definition or vision of communism because I would very much like to know, sir, how you expect to entice people into a system where they voluntarily redistribute all of the fruits of their labor with people that did not work as hard as them for the good of the community when you can't even incentivize the most homogenous, most socially and culturally united countries in the world to do that. And for that, I would cite Russia and China and all the others. So I'd like to hear your response to all that.
All right, all right. I want to start off with the agreements. I agree with you on pretty much every single piece of policy that you suggested. They're actually almost word for word things that I've advocated on my channel for quite some time, and I'm glad that other people actually understand what policies need to be passed to bring about some change in the country. So, I just want to say that was beautifully said, and I completely agree with you on the beginning policies that you talked about with legislation, tax incentives, and things like this. These are very good, and I think that if everything that you said passed, a lot of people would be a lot more happy with their material condition and how the government worked. And going forward, there would probably be a lot less push for communism or socialism as an answer to a lot of these people's plights, right? And I agree. I just don't think that it fully goes far enough in some areas. And I also like to point out that a problem with our government is that we're a corporate, pretty much government. Whatever corporations want, they can pretty much get because they are the capital owners. They accrued the wealth in order to throw that wealth around. They're able to fund politicians. And the unfortunate truth is that in the U.S. Political system, the person with the most amount of money and contributions is typically the person that wins the elections, both locally and federally. And it's very, very hard to subvert the processes that we have using the system that they built to benefit themselves. It's honestly really hard to dig us out of this hole that we've built where you need money to be in to run in politics. And the politicians get that money from someone, and we don't have that much money because corporations don't pay us our fair share. So then the corporations give the money to the politicians because they have the money, and then the politicians rely on that, and it's this toxic relationship between them. So there has to be a way to solve that, and I think that's probably the biggest problem that the United States faces at the moment, and that needs to be stomped out before everything else, right? Like, transitioning the economy to something else is just like, right? Like, I mean, that's pretty high up there, but it's not as high as up there as the political corruption. Now to the other, to address your other stuff about like your problem with the communist vision and how you feel about. Actually, let me start with the Norway and those countries. So to get that out of the way, I agree that homogeny is a big factor, but I don't think it really has to do on the race, but I think it's a homogeny of idea and vision. You have these, they're a lot smaller than the United States, and they have a lot of resources, and they have a general, clear, shared culture and idea of what direction to go into. But I think that is something that even Karl Marx has brought a answer to, is that if you had worker homogeny, we'd be able to pass economic policies. We don't all have to agree on what God there is or what our social values are on everything, but everybody that isn't a CEO, backroom, capital owner is a worker, no matter what job you're doing. And if you can unite people as workers to at least focus on some issues, we can start making economic change. So there's the homogeny on that. But then to address the resources, the United States isn't one country, like a lot of people like to make it out. It's 50 small countries that basically have a union. in my opinion. I think a lot of people might agree with that assessment that each state works as its own de facto government and country. And when you look at these states, they have the same resources, populations, money, and sometimes even homogeny as countries like Norway, Iceland, and Finland, France, right? So I don't think that there is a, maybe you're right about it being a difficult task to hurdle on a federal level, but I just see no reason why on an individual state by state level that we couldn't see states honing in on their policy to either provide universal healthcare or education on a state level, or making a more left-wing economics state versus, you can have more right-wing economic states because they have the resources, population, and sometimes even the homogeny that's like on par to the countries you're talking about. Another thing is that with the countries, the population to resource level and GDP is a good indicator to look at how possible something is. Obviously, if you're poor and you don't have many resources, the amount of things that you can socialize and provide as a benefit to your citizens, that's going to drop severely. But we've seen a lot of countries with less GDP and less resources be able to at least get the healthcare thing in line, right? Like, forget mass public transport or education for all, at least the healthcare, right? Something that generally is indiscriminate and affects everybody. Anybody can get cancer no matter how much of a hard worker you are. And the more health issues you have, the less valuable you are as a worker and a citizen. And that hurts the community. So at least getting that in line seems to be a no-brainer, especially for a rich nation such as the United States. But I mean, if you look at the GDP of the United States and how much valuable resources we have compared to how many citizens we have, it is clear that the problem is not resources per person. And I think that when it comes to size, you might be right about federally trying to sweep passing laws, but I think that statewide, people should be trying to push what they want state by state. And I'm very much into state rights. And then on the last point that you're talking about, communism being forced down people's throat. Again, I said that's a problem. I think that authoritarianism and the centralization of power is demonstrably evil, and I think that their use of popular policy and attaching themselves to communism and socialism was a very evil tactic in order to win over people with popular policy. Because socialism and communism was popular for a while, even in the United States, right? And what do evil people do? They like to fucking attach themselves to popular policy. I mean, look at our leaders now in the United States who claim that they represent freedom, democracy, and all these good, nice buzzwords. Or even they say, if you think you like capitalism, they say they'll be a capitalist, but then implement anti-capitalist policies. So it's like you can say you're something, but not really ascribe yourself to those values. I think that there's a huge world of difference between what Mao and Lenin was doing versus what Marx was writing about. Marx never killed anybody, all right? But Mao did, Lenin did, and it's a cautionary tale. And I think that if a government is saying we should give us the power in order to provide communism for you, there should be a shit ton of red flags. But I think on a local level, when you look at communes that are being built in like New York, Virginia, Washington, California, Oregon, and you look at the wealth sharing, there's a lot of good things that are going on in those communities, and they're not killing people. They're not starving people. And for the incentives, while the farthest left you can get with communism is a stateless, moneyless, classless society. But honestly, that's just us talking about a utopia at that point. But there's a lot of room before that, right? So we don't have to abolish money, and not everybody has to have an equal paycheck. Socialism and communism's main core tenet has to do about who owns the means of production, not about sharing and redistributing wealth in the sense that I think a lot of people tend to use it, but who's the person who gets to reap the rewards of their labor? Is it going to be more the worker or more an owner? And socialism and capitalism try to bring down the amount of people that have capital and be able to influence that over you, and tries to increase the amount of democracy in a workforce and the amount of money and wealth that is brought into the worker's hand instead of an owner's hand. So that's kind of what I like to focus on, and those are the values I like to espouse. And I will denounce anybody who says anything different of the systems. I think it's a huge red flag when you say that the only way that communism should be done or is through a state and forcefully. You can't do that, especially with something like communism. There has to be cooperation that is consensualized, and how you can incentivize people is one. I mean, just off of from a moral perspective, a lot of people that are communists view it as a more moral system of like not being greedy. All right. So there's already people that want to be in what they view as a more moral system. So there's people that will volunteer already to move into that. But for the people that may be a little bit more hesitant on that, some ways that you can incentivize them is by, again, guaranteeing some socialized services that couldn't be guaranteed under the current capitalist model, such as, all right, you're going to go into this state that has a more socialist economic model. You will get healthcare, you will get housing, you will get education.
I would like to ask you a question.
Okay, go ahead.
You're talking about guaranteeing certain social services, and healthcare is one of the ones that you've specifically dialed in on. Zoomed
yes.
in on.
Yes.
Explain to me how you guarantee healthcare without slaves.
Well, everybody wants to work and has to work, right? In order to get something out of life. I'm not a proponent of if you can work and you don't, that you should be given something. I think that being part of a community, anything part of society is that you provide to society and society provides back to you, right? So there's always going to be workers.
From each
right?
to their ability, to each to their need. Yeah, I'm very familiar with the thing.
Well, I'm not. I'm just. This is in a capitalist society as well, right? Is that I mean, everybody has to work, right? Minus some CEOs that can coast for the rest of their life just by like telling people to do their shit, but for them. But everybody has to work. If you want something, you got to work, and
okay,
that's
so
no different under communism.
I feel like you're getting a little bit away from the principal nugget of what I'm asking for here.
Okay,
So,
could you reiterate?
yes. So what I'm asking you, to be clear, is healthcare is a specific service, and it requires highly trained individuals if you want a quality of care that is anything above witch doctory. These individuals require thousands of hours of education. I'm very familiar with this because I don't know where your specialties lie, but my specialties, as far as career path, are spec'd into the human body and what I would call entry-level medical care and physical therapy. And,
hey, nice.
And thank you. And I am exceedingly familiar with how much education it takes to properly care for people. Literally thousands of hours, whether it's formal or self-educated. It's thousands of hours at a minimum to do a decent job of actually helping people with their medical problems. Partially because diagnosis is an extremely tricky business. But now I'm going off on a tangent. So what I'm driving at is, why would someone, if the only standard is you have to contribute to society in some way, why would anyone in their right mind voluntarily go I'm going to self-educate or engage with some level of state education, whatever that looks like, for tens of thousands of hours? Why would they go through the hassle of doing that? If they can, under the system that would be espoused by communists, they could sweep floors, or make sandwiches, or turn wrenches on simple machines for a living, instead of do something that is incredibly complex and bears a high moral responsibility and a high level of emotional culpability when you do a bad job. why would anyone become a healthcare worker? And
Mm. Mhm.
under that line of thought, we naturally arrive at, well, there would be a lot fewer healthcare workers. And now that there's a lot fewer healthcare workers, there's a strain on the supply of a service to the demand. Now you have a situation where doctors are probably going to have to be forced to work longer hours than they would want to or even sustainably can, so that the state will have its healthcare needs met. So I repeat the question: under a communist system, how do you guarantee healthcare without engaging in some level of slavery of the medical professionals?
Okay. Well, you don't need slavery because you can offer incentives, whether that be that you get paid more, which I know that sounds like it's not socialism or communism, but actually, again, socialism, communism, its core principle is who owns the means of production, not about equalizing the pay of all workers. So it's not really much about the pay; it's about uh, who's in charge, right? So there could be still incentives of pay, right? It's also we're talking about needs. You can't have a community that doesn't have healthcare workers, or it would be a really bad. So somebody would want to do it just out of the pure it is needed to be done. And humans are kind of weird where they like to do stuff even if it's not the most optimal. Like the amount of people that I know who are CNAs or nurses that are going to not make as much as jobs that require way less effort and time is huge. But you ask them why, and they go, well, this is what I want it to do. And as long as the bills are being paid, they will continue to do it. So there's some level of passion that comes into it. So there's the need, the passion, and monetary incentive that all can be wrapped around into this. I also want to push back against the idea that communism somehow has less doctors, because even Cuba, a highly sanctioned country who has experienced a lot of troubles with trade and having a lot of embargoes placed on it, a lot of restrictions on it, produces some pretty impressive healthcare results for what they have, to the point that they actually send out their doctors even to the countries that sanction them in order to help train and help provide aid, especially during emergencies. So there's that, right, in practice. And also in theory, if it's cheaper to become a doctor and you don't have the risk of, okay, if I go into school and it's not for me, then I'm going to have $120,000 in debt. Or if I go into school and I am a doctor, I have to worry about, okay, how am I going to live during my residency, and how am I going to pay off the loans afterwards? What if I don't get into a good practice? What if it takes time to get it? Like, how fucked am I? What is the interest levels? These are all like concerns that sway people in this current free market model away from going into the medical field. Now, there is a lot of incentives if you make it to be a very rich doctor, but we do see that the U.S. is experiencing a lot of medical shortcomings, while other countries don't seem to have as high. I think it is a nationwide thing, honestly, that a lot of countries do have less medical people than they need. But when you look at the proportion of it, if I remember correctly, the U.S. is falling a bit behind other countries when it comes to recruiting and getting in new doctors. And I think that's because of the risk versus the reward factor. It's like, yeah, it's nice to make 100 G's, as a doctor, but the risk to get there and the fact that a lot of people don't know if something's for them until they try it, I think it's more advantageous to a society to be able to allow people to explore that field, and then you have people realize that it is really what's for them and get them into the field with little risk and lots of reward. I think that
Okay.
answers everything.
So there's a few things in which you are arguing from a bad pool of information.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
let's start with Cuba. You had some praise for the Cuban healthcare system.
Yes.
Cuba is undergoing a healthcare crisis right now. the reporting on the quality of healthcare in Cuba is entirely subjective when you talk about the satisfaction rates and happiness rates with healthcare in Cuba. All of those
Mm-hmm.
surveys that display it in a positive light are from subjective surveys. When you look at objective metrics, Cuba's in the trash can, along with every other socialized medical system. This is why Canada has started telling people with depression, hey, you're sad, why don't you kill yourself about it? Because their financial system for their healthcare system is simply so overburdened, they have to start killing people for the sad because they can't afford to give them drugs. The same thing is true in the UK. I don't know if you're familiar with the case of Charlie Gard, but basically a kid was born with a extremely hard to treat birth defect, congenital issue. Parents raised money, doctors and the NHS wouldn't have it. They condemned him to death anyways. Wouldn't let his parents take him out of the country for medical care. Presumably because they thought it would make them look bad if their social system failed to do what capitalism was openly inviting the parents to come do, which was engage in experimental treatment. More recently, there's been case after case after case where individuals were told, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to die about it because the social systems for healthcare in these countries simply do not have the money to treat them. Now, you can, how to articulate this? You can sit here and talk about, human tendency towards this or that, and that's all well and good to a certain extent, but at some point, the data has to enter the conversation, and we have to, at some point, get away from our own terms and our own definitions and look at the historical precedent. You are associating yourself with a label that has a 0% success rate on creating systems that naturally incentivize people to go into professions that the market is demanding. This is one of the reasons I don't understand your insistence on identifying with the label. Calling yourself an anarcho-capitalist, I could understand. An economic libertarian would make sense. But everything I hear you saying, communism is not the solution. Communism would be a disaster for these problems because every time it's been tried, it's failed abysmally. Whereas you can fix those problems, and in fact, those problems didn't always exist in capitalist countries. So, for example, education and healthcare is two of the easiest ones to do this with. When you look at the buying power of the average household compared to medical costs prior to the Great Depression, it was no more expensive to have state-of-the-art care than it was to go get a cart of groceries. Healthcare was extremely inexpensive prior to the Great Depression. Do you know what changed that?
What changed it?
The New Deal was enacted, and now healthcare providers were able to be bargained with by employers as a form of compensation to employees, and the collective bargaining created a vast money pool that healthcare providers could now tap into at zero expense up front to the consumer, which caused a rapid inflation because, yes, one of the problems that exists in capitalism is greed. And so when that massive pool of money was created, costs inflated because of the greed element. If government had not intervened and allowed businesses to collectively bargain to create these pools of wealth for the healthcare industry to suck into, it never would have become a problem. Next, we have the problem of education. Well, same thing with education. Prior to, and I can't remember when student loans were created, I think it was the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, something like that. But now that we've had the student loan system for the amount of time we have, I think the cost of education has inflated something like 4,000%. And the only thing that really changed fundamentally was the availability of cheap loans from the government. Same thing. When the universities got access to this insane pool of money, they just kept jacking up the price, and the government said, well, that's the price they're jacking it up to. We'll pay it, because people in government have no regard for how they spend their money, because it's not their money, it's the people's money. And when you're writing checks with someone else's pocketbook, you always overspend. So that's what I have to say about a lot of what you're saying. I mean, I keep coming back to the analysis that you are blaming capitalism for things that are not inherently capitalism's fault, and your prescription is a insistence that somehow you can remaster and revamp the intense amount of social, political, and historical baggage that is married to the ideology of communism. Mm-hmm. And instead of trying to salvage the festering, beached walrus that is communism, I don't understand why you wouldn't rather seek to create something new and innovative. So, go ahead.
Oh, I'm down for something new and innovative. That's actually where I want to end the conversation with, so we'll get back to that in a bit. But to address a few things, I agree with you that what you're saying from the New Deal and about giving money to these corporations to subsidize them has led to a whole ordeal of problems, which is why I don't agree with the government subsidizing private corporations that are profit driven and will do anything in their power. Like, to them, that's just, oh, okay, that's a free expense. Okay, we're going to do nothing. A good example is that I live in a rent controlled apartment where the government gives money to the apartment to lower prices by a certain amount, but because the regulations are so bad, it basically ends up where they only have to lower the price of, I think, like 5% of units, and for 5% of the units where I'm at is like 3 units. And the rest of the apartment complex pretty much is on par, if not like maybe only a few $100s, maybe like 200, right? Lower than some other places of similar quality, because the regulations are not tight enough, and the apartment complex just sees it as a way to increase their profit ratio. So I agree with you there. And I do have solutions to it. And again, I do want to iterate that when it comes to like the entirety of the United States, I don't think the entirety of the United States has to be communist or socialism to the letter. I think that it needs to allow socialism and communism to naturally breed in, if it flourishes or fails, that's up to it. Like, leave room. But I think that every country should have a mixed economic status that mixes in the benefits that we have seen from capitalism, because I don't think it's this all evil system. I just think that the way that we have used capitalism leads to incentivizing negative behavior that overall destroys economies long term and lowers the quality of life for a lot of people. Like, it goes up initially. I think it's a great starter for a country to have more libertarian policies, but I think that at a certain point you need to change your economic strategy from growth to maintaining stability and quality of life. And the U.S. has not transferred from the capitalist model of growth to the socialist model of sustainability and quality of life. And when it comes to how I think it could be done, how we can mix these policies, right, is that for healthcare and a bunch of essential services, I think that the easiest way to mix the economies would to have both a private option and a public option that pretty much competes. You can have the taxpayers' dollars be pulled into a public option that, let's say, takes up 20%, 25% of the market share. So for essential services that are like voted on, let's look at what's essential for life. Okay, so like water, some natural resources, housing, healthcare, education, food. Some might say the internet is in there, roads, libraries, some type of security, right? And some of that is already extremely socialized in the United States already, rightfully so. But a lot of it is suffering from not taking advantage of the socialized model of pooling together money, like healthcare in the United States. So I think if you have a private option where you pool together the public's money and taxpayer money and have a institute that's dedicated to not providing a profit, but providing services that meet a certain level of quality, we can have a win-win for a lot of people here. So first off, you'll have a cheap option since it's not searching for profit that meets we'll call it just the bare minimum to start with of needs that a person can seek after. So if you're not in a good economic position, this could be a very good place to start off with. Now you can have private competition still, so you have all the nice aspects of innovation and capitalism that you want, but they have to compete with a bare level of needs, right? So there's a certain set of basically manipulating the market in order to make it where, okay, well, if you're going to compete, you're going to want to be better than the public option, right? So now we have private corporations that will work around trying to find a way to be profitable and better than that public in order to secure a profit and get people to switch to their side. I think this is a beautiful mix of both markets, and this would be a mixed economy. This is not an economy that's fully capitalist or fully socialist. And I think that 20 to 80 or 25 to 75 model can be really good. And when it comes to the healthcare, I just want to address that like Japan, who has socialized healthcare, they have impressive stats according to the GHS index. In Asia, they're the second best. Let's see, when it comes to for preventative care, they're ranked out of, let's see, how many countries are there? 195 countries. They're ranked 18th in the world, with 43 in prevention, 71 in detection, 59 in response, 50 first in healthcare, 66 in norms, and 70 in risk. Oh, no, that's not the rank. Sorry, that's the rating. My bad. The rank is 45 for prevention, ninth best in the world for detection, 14th for response, 38th for health, 18th for norms, and 39 for risk. So they're in the top 33% in everything, top 20% in most of the stats that matter. And this is the socialized healthcare, and almost every single person in Japan is covered by this healthcare. And they're a very productive society. And some of that is cultural as well. But I think we can both agree that it helps to have employees that have access to, glasses to see, aren't getting sick as often. And then it has compounding effects, such as if you're sick less, then it's going to be less of a burden on the economy because you're going to be working more. And the less sick you are, the less money has to go into taking care of you. So you have to look at the prevention costs, right? That compounds all together. Is that, all right, so in a system where it's like healthcare is super unaffordable and privatized, you have so many competing forces. You have insurance, so now you're paying insurance, and but you're still paying the healthcare directly as well. And sometimes your insurance doesn't work here, but it works here. So you can have you might not be able to choose the doctor that's going to be the best for you. So you're limiting options there, but also because you don't want to spend a lot of money, you're going to go to the doctors less, which means you're getting less checkups. You're getting treated for things less, which can compound into later more serious issues and or make you more sick more often. So this is an economic loss to both the community and the wider system of healthcare. But in a single-payer healthcare system like Japan's, where everybody is covered and 70% of healthcare is covered by taxes, and there is still private competition in healthcare, but most people are on the public option because of how good it is. Any doctor, you can go to any doctor, so you get to choose your doctor and you have choices. You're guaranteed a standard level of care, and you're able to go and not worry about, oh my gosh, is this going to break the bank? So you're going to the doctors more, which means you're getting sick less, which means that preventative care is preventing long-term ailments, and it's going to cost less overall. And I
Okay.
think a lot of studies show that. So like, yeah, just to like
That
focus in on the
yeah.
okay, sorry, go.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'll hop in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I don't contest a lot of what you're saying about Japan. I think Japan is an outlier, and I think that it is an outlier on the social medicine bad rule of thumb for many, many reasons, some of which are um, directly tied to the exact way they administer the system, some of which are tied to the fact that their culture has the baked in principles and values that it has. Uh, there's a lot of things about Japan that make it a one of one scenario. I think it would be virtually impossible to replicate Japan's system in any country that did not share those values.
But
And
73 countries have universal health care.
73
And
countries have universal health care. How many of them have the success with it that Japan has? So, again, go ahead.
okay, but Japan is, we're talking about like the top of the cream of the crop, but we don't see the same. I agree with you with Canada and UK being a disgrace to the system, but that isn't really showing that the system doesn't work. It just shows that Canada and the UK are fucking shitholes like we have always known. Like, let's be honest. Like, I've lived in Canada. There was aspects of it that made it better than the US at the time I lived there, but I slowly watched it literally strip away everything that made it great, and now it's fucking shitty, right? But we wouldn't say these things about like Australia, New Zealand. I mean, a lot of Latin America, even though it does suffer from being, not the best economic spots, they do have some surprisingly good healthcare. A lot of Asia, like Singapore, is another example of a capitalist place that uses socialized healthcare to a very a successful degree. South Korea, they're number two when it comes to producing pharmaceuticals as well. So that's nice. We're number one, by the way, which is good, but it shows that even under the system, there's competition there when it comes to creating pharmaceuticals. And then you can look at a lot of Europe, right? I don't think anybody is going to be like, oh, wow, Norway and Iceland and Germany and Denmark and Belgium, France, Austria, all these like are horrible healthcare systems. I do think they have problems, but all you have to do is look at some basic stats of, okay, how long are they living? I think that's a big indicator. And even Canada with its problems, the average life expectancy is almost 82 years, while in the US it's dropping and is at 77 years, right? So, like looking at just up here life expectancy, but a lot plays into life expectancy. It's not just healthcare. But if you look at more specific targeted and you look at the prevention care and you look at mental health and you look at the normal health condition of somebody, the risks that they face, the surgery margin of errors, it's all going to be typically less than the US. Now, where the US succeeds is that it produces really good pharmaceutical medicines really fast. All right. And it's really good at hyper specific surgery, such as heart surgery, cancer treatment. So very expensive targeted care. These are very great. All right. And I'm willing to admit when the U.S. does so, I don't want to come off as an unreasonable person that thinks that everything is bad. I just see some problems and I want to provide solutions. And I think that it's not crazy to say we should socialize some stuff and allow communists to do communist things in their area as long as it's consensual, right? So that's like the whole point of this. But most people aren't getting fucking heart surgery or transplants or hyper specific surgeries. So I think that it's safe to say that their healthcare system is working generally for the average person better than the US healthcare system. And when it comes to the pharmaceuticals, I don't know if you watched Bernie Sanders grilling the pharma execs, but they admitted, and I can get the link for you want, during that they're turning a profit on their medicine at the low cost that they sell in Japan, Canada, and Europe, while in the US, the inflated prices are just like way inflated. An example that they gave was that in Canada, it was something like $500 a year to supply a year's worth of supply to somebody for this one medication. While in the US, it was like $9,800. And Bernie Sanders asked, are you turning a profit in these other countries like Japan and Canada? And they admitted, yes, we are turning a profit at this. And
Do you
he
know
asked
why that
them,
is?
go humor me, why?
So you're correct. You're absolutely correct. And the reason why, and I think that this should have been legislatively corrected, but the reason why they're turning a profit at the cost at those lower drug sale costs in other countries is because those other countries' consumers are being subsidized by the American consumer. So the drugs are more expensive here for our own citizens than they are overseas because it is easier for those big pharmaceutical companies to milk the American consumer than it is consumers in other countries for reasons that I previously stated. Things like the New Deal and other American legislation and policy, it makes it easier for the big companies to game the system and milk the American public for all it's worth. And if you were to tell me, hey, we need some protectionism type legislation to ensure that they stop doing that so that the big pharma companies have to find a way to get kind of the same dollar value out of everyone they sell to instead of 10% of the dollar value from Japanese citizens and 90% from American citizens, I would not only agree with you, I would be more than willing to personally sign my name to that legislation because
But go ahead.
that
Sorry,
is
sorry.
that is a reasonable amount of government intervention to protect its citizens. But I would not call that communism. I would call that protective nationalism, economic
You can call it
protective.
what you want, but it's socializing the system.
How is it socializing the system to tell a company you cannot unfairly price gouge our own citizens while discounting it for other countries? That's not socialization.
The way that the people do these negotiations, as I'll read off a comment that kind of describes it well, is because as Casey Lee says, it's not that it's that no health insurance is big enough to haggle down the price. If we had a single payer that negotiates the one-to-one, as sure as shit ain't capitalism. And I agree with that. The system that you're talking about has successfully been done through a single payer health system because you have your taxpayer is going into the system. This system is the one that haggles with all health insurances, both private and public. So you have a direct line to track this and be able to negotiate. So you have the power of the entire country haggling the price of medicines. And I agree with you that we do subsidize medicine, but maybe I don't know. We didn't get specific in how, but I think the how is that we subsidize research and development. We don't subsidize the price of the medicine. The research and development is what we're subsidizing, which, if spread out between all other 73 countries, could be lowered. So that will work out. They'll see a slight boost will in price, but very negligible. Because if we're talking about $13 to $23, I don't think they're going to fucking, whine too much. But we would see huge amounts of discounts on our drug prices for spreading out the research and development costs. But when it comes to the production and distribution of the drug, they make a profit by producing it for $8 and selling it in Japan, Canada, and Europe for X amount, whether it's 18 or whatever. They're still making a profit. So we're not subsidizing their drug prices in that sense. But in research and development, you're absolutely correct.
Well, when you're talking about making a profit on a product, you don't just look at one aspect of the product's production. You sum total everything it took to get that product to the consumer before the consumer's money was in your hand. And then you total it all up on the spreadsheet and see how much the consumer gave you and how much it total cost you to get that product into the consumer's hand, okay? And so if the American consumer is overpaying for a drug by 800%, which
Yes.
allows the big pharmaceutical company, we'll pick on Pfizer because they're evil, if it
Yes.
allows Pfizer to get that drug to Japan for a mere $20 out of their pocket instead of $500 out of their pocket because they got the missing 480 from the American consumer, then that is direct subsidization of the Japanese consumer by the American consumer.
But not every drug that we sell is research and develop.
No, not every drug. No, not 100% not. But you're
Wait.
getting into whataboutisms and what ifs.
No. This isn't a whataboutism. Let me make this point real quick, please.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Not every drug is a drug that was required off of R&D of the United States, is what I was going to say. So there's drugs that have been shared, research and development, that still, despite there being an international effort to create, we still pay more for. So that doesn't make sense. There's also drugs that were not created in the United States that we pay way more for. So... and then there's ones that like when you think about like insulin, right? Why is insulin so much, right? I mean, for one, the patent was sold for like $1, right? And it was created by somebody that was not seeking a profit incentive and was basically handed out. I highly doubt the amount of innovation that has been done to insulin warrants the huge price markup that we see when like other people can get it for like $10-15, but here it's like $5. And then the last thing that I want to point out on the research and development is that while I do agree that other like countries do need to do like some fair share, isn't that something that the U.S. should be like advocating for instead of just the pharmaceutical companies just thinking we should bite the fucking bullet and just keep on having a low life expectancy and like dying? I think we can both agree that we need to start at least advocating at like getting the research and development cost not pawned onto the American people, and like nobody's doing that.
We agree 100%.
Yeah,
we clearly disagree on the avenue that it should be. We disagree on the route to take, but we agree on the importance of the destination 100%.
Yeah, and again, like I'm saying with a lot of this is that we can achieve this with a mixed market economy. We don't have to eliminate all. Okay, but you already live in a mixed market in an efficient way. Like the United States Postal Office has a huge public approval rating. You're almost guaranteed to get your packages, especially if they are what is it called, where you pay the extra $15 to have it certified mail. Yeah, so certified mail is absolutely wonderful. And last time I checked, let's see what the like public approval rating of UPS.
I'm literally Googling it.
Approval of United States public.
That is unreal. 90% as of a 2020 survey.
Yeah, it's a very wonderful.
Considering the amount of, considering how often the USPS is the butt of casual jokes, it is amazing that the actual number is that high.
Well, I think a lot of people also conflate what the United States Postal Office is. I've heard people compare it to the private organization of the UPS, which is not the same. So I think there is also like a little bit of confusion there. And a lot of people, it's like, it doesn't matter if it's like FedEx or something, they all consider it all lumped together as one. But as somebody that has to work with these mail services quite often, I don't work with with them. As in I'm employed by them, but I work with them as I'm employed by a government agency that has to use all of mailing services. And I will tell you, the United States Postal Service comes through way better than and I know that's anecdotal, but I think the public approval rating does show that there's some insane approval for how much we appreciate such an essential service. So this is an example, and it's not the only. You're not forced to use the United States postal service, right? You can choose FedEx, you can choose them, but they have to meet the standard of the United States public postal service, or they're going to fall way behind. The only way they can turn a profit is if they at least are meeting the bare minimum, and we've set the bare minimum with that. And I'm saying we can do that with healthcare. I mean, you also have national parks. That's a socialized service. We have a lot of firefighters. Yeah, there's private firefighters, but we also pay firefighters with our dollar, right? Because it's an essential service. Same with roads. A lot of roads are paid for by the taxpayer dollar. I think we all appreciate having roads and not having to pay every single time we go on a road. Though I think it is wild, and we should hold governments accountable that do toll roads, like in Texas. Like, fucking a red state. Think about it. Texas putting toll roads everywhere. Like, what the fuck is that? But we're already living in a mixed economy. I think we should expand the benefits of a mixed economy. And like, you didn't reply to the thing where I said 20% of the market being owned by public services, only in essential services, like things that we want to make sure do not fail. Like, do you want planes to fail? Like, I mean, look at Boeing, a private corporation that is getting handouts from the government but keeps on fucking up, right? Like,
I think the problem with Boeing is exactly the handouts from the government, and if they were here's the thing about Boeing. If Boeing was allowed to fail the multiple times they should have when the market was correcting, a bunch of smaller companies would have popped up to fill that gap, and there would be organic competition, and someone better would have existed by now. But instead, they were bailed out by the government multiple times because I'm a defense contractor. Um, and I have still been waiting for an argument that actually convinces me that the socialization of these systems and services is the best way to fix them. So you have not.
it doesn't have to be the best. It has to be better, right? Are you willing to take better over best?
I am willing to take better over best. Here's the thing. We already know that, generally speaking, if you look at it purely from a scientific logical lens, socialization, especially in non-homogeneous communities and countries, does not seem to yield good results. We have a case study with the demographics and the cultural institutions and presets that we have right here in the country. If we rolled back legislation and reset things closer to the real free market that we had during the pre-depression era, healthcare costs would go back down. And there's some additional protections you could put in for consumers on top of simply rolling back government regulation that would enforce the readjustment.
You mind if I read a comment as well from somebody that does have somebody in Boeing after you finish your somebody that I know has a little bit of more knowledge of Boeing had an interesting comment, but I'll let you finish and then I'll read it out.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to wrap this up pretty quickly. So, I told you that healthcare costs exploded after the government began subsidizing it. I told you that education costs exploded after the government began subsidizing it.
That's because they didn't subsidize a public option. I admitted that it is because we subsidized a private option, which doesn't work ever. You got to subsidize the public option in order to bring down the prices and regulate the private option. I didn't hear any counter to that, which is like kind of where I started out with.
Are you familiar with the Apple Health system in Washington State?
I am not.
Okay. I was on it. So, this is one of the reasons I believe in some level of social safety nets, because I would be a total hypocrite if I sat and pretended like I never benefited from them. Because I was poor. I've been poor most of my life. I'd still consider myself economically poor. And the system, the Apple Health system in Washington, has been getting more and more stressed over the years. And there used to be a decent selection of doctors. It's dwindled significantly. There used to be a decent selection of dentists. It's dwindled significantly. And it has gotten so bad that if you want to go in for something as simple as a cavity filling, let's say, it is a several month wait for a dentist appointment. Whereas the private options are still a week, tops. Now, that doesn't necessarily speak to price at all, but I think it does speak to the extreme tendency towards inefficiency and loss of quality when you begin getting government involved in these services.
Um, See, this one's a hard one for me to kind of talk about because I have no experience with it. But I would reject just make him be specific, is what Casey Lee IRL says. But first, I'll get through my thing, which is I was going to say that I don't know how that system works, so I don't know the failing of why there would be less doctors or the wait times would go up, because this could be a lot of things. This could be that the private market made housing so unaffordable that the public market or the public option dentists and doctors move away or live far away, or maybe that the cost of private land has skyrocketed, so it's hard to start your own business or afford even the land. We've seen this happen in places like Seattle, where a lot of people don't even want to start a business in Seattle. I mean, one, like let's not ignore the crime and stuff, but I think a major option, because there's a crime in a lot of places, right? But the major thing is that it's so fucking expensive, right? And if we had public options when it came to like maybe a public portion of land where taxpayers paid for land of which the price of the land doesn't go up, and it allows essential services to be built on that, then I think that can correct, if that's the issue. Again, this is speculation because I don't have enough information on this, and this is where it's kind of hard to debate one of these things. Like, I'm fully going to admit I don't know what you're talking about when you're talking about this. I'm guessing it's the Washington State's public healthcare option, but I have no idea about the intricacies of how that works, right? While I have lived in Washington, I've never engaged with its public healthcare because I had a private healthcare immediately the first job I took out there, so it's kind of, I'm just saying it's a little bit unfair for me to try to come in onto this and when I don't know all the facts of why it could fail. I don't think you can say simply it's because public healthcare option, because I've been to many countries where I was served perfectly fine under a public healthcare option and was surprised by the low cost of things. I know that we've agreed that Japan is a bit of an oddity of how they work, but I have had to also in Europe, I've had multiple times where I've had to go see doctors. I have a lot of healthcare issues, and while not being on any of the European nationalized healthcare, all the private options were very fucking cheap because of the public healthcare options, and I was seen right away, whether it be because I got bit by a spider, or once when I was backpacking, I broke my glasses, and I had to go get glasses, and it cost me under $100 instantly, no insurance needed. Right? So I have seen it literally work in almost every single country I've been to. So by saying that, well, in America, somehow we can't do it, are we like just too stupid, or are we just too corrupt, or is it just other factors? Because in an ecosystem, you can't just change one variable and expect everything to change around it. I think we can agree that everything's an ecosystem. Everything relies on something. If you affect one thing, it's a domino effect and affects everything. So maybe if you're going to change a system, you need to focus on critical points of that domino effect and make sure that it works. Like, make sure if you have a public option, you're not just going half-assed with it. And this is a lot of the arguments that you've thrown at me feel like it's the United States going half-assed because it's seen bad to do public options on stuff, unless if they're already there. Most people are going to be like, let's not get rid of the state parks or libraries, right? Because we were born with it. But then you start talking about healthcare and education, they get like, ooh, oh no. And I think it's just because any implementation of it has been half-assed.
Let me run something by you. So I made it clear that some level of social safety net on various things was acceptable to me. Let me run this by
Yes.
you.
Okay.
So I conceived of a potential something. It kind of fits inside the system you're describing here. What if we picked a location that was fairly central in every state, geographically and infrastructurally central. So that's good access on the main highways and
Hmm.
equalizing travel time between any part of the state to this point as much as possible. Okay, there's obviously going to be a lot of limitations there due to existing infrastructure, but you do the best you can, and you pick a spot. Government land would be the obvious choice because there's the government already owns it. The government of the state, going back to states' rights and federalism,
Hmm.
the state collects taxes, builds a hospital there, and that is the state's free hospital. And it has a dentist, and it has a physical therapist, and it has a pharmacologist, and 100% of the medical services in that facility are government subsidized, and a certain amount of transportation to that facility is government subsidized by taxes. You could levy a slight tax on something and just figure out how much you had to
Yeah.
levy to make it financially soluble.
To
And,
that, I want to say, can I get the
and
motherfucking? Sorry, my chat made me redeem it. I'm sorry.
cringe as fuck.
I'm
So
sorry.
that
Okay,
is
keep it going.
no. So that's what I pitched to you. Would that is a compromise from my worldview that I know a lot of conservatives would not be okay with that. I would be okay with that. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty good, but I would like to even make it a little bit looser of like, you can vote in local councils to do this in centralized areas because, um, you have some states that are just so huge, like California or like, Washington, where there's a few areas, so maybe you would have to make a few of them on each state. So I would say like maybe make it a little bit more localized to your area where you can vote in a lot of the things you're talking about. But I do agree this is a very good policy that I would consider a left leaning policy that would benefit a lot of people because there is merit to social safety nets and socializing certain aspects of things, or at least having a left policy economic wise, some sort of left policy can boost people up, right? It can't just be like do whatever you want. That's never worked. But I do agree that's a good step in the right direction. And if they did it, I'd be a lot more happy. I still think that that states should invest 20% into major industries because again, we're talking about like you still have the competition aspect and a lot of people, or maybe even the 70%, kind of like what Japan laid out. I think it's a very good way of looking, but I kind of want to lower the tax burden on people and use tax efficiently. So I think 20% would be a really good test area.
Yeah,
Are you
bro, you're
really
talking
against?
to a conservative. I don't oppose the trimming of the fat in government spending.
Oh yeah, I think that everything I've stated, I think that you can socialize services without raising taxes. All you have to do is hold them accountable. Pretty much, you got to figure out where is the money going to, how is it being spent, and punish them if it's not being spent properly. Like, here's a little piece of legislation that
Now you're speaking my language. Go on.
like here's like an example of what I think is something a commune could pass if they're like trying to do something, or like a county or whatever you want to call it, a localized area. All right, so you want to build a tunnel, all right, and no private company's building the tunnel, but the people want the tunnel. Okay, well, here's a tax of what we think it will cost to make the tunnel. Okay, we agreed on it, we voted on. So now we are paying an extra tax, but the bill has a sunset clause, right? Are you familiar with sunset clauses at all?
I mean, the term is pretty self-explanatory, but I
Okay,
understand
cool.
the term. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it has a sunset clause to it of which after this X amount of time, the tax goes away, right? And if they need more money after that, right, for whatever reason, they would have to re-pull the tax. So that way it's one of those things of like, all right, if they're doing a bad job and you can see that there was no progress being made and you don't trust them, guess what? We're not going to fund it anymore, right? And I think another clause that should be added to temporary taxes like this should be that an audit needs to be conducted, right? And if it is found that the taxes were spent unwisely and or were spent not on that thing or inefficiently on that thing, that you should get some form of rebate, whether that is a stimulus check directly to you or a tax rebate where you are paying less in taxes because they fucked you on taxes. I think this could make it a very democratic way of making things happen in life. Oh, you guys want a park? Okay, well, public vote, right? You take it to the council. People are like, hey, we want a park. Okay, public opinion poll. Do you guys want a park? Oh, you want a park? Okay, let's vote on it. All right, it's finalized. Everybody wants a park. All right, so this is the tax, 5% for the next 3 years. Okay, we paid 5% for the next 3 years. Either the park is being built and it's done, or maybe, oh, we overestimate it. It's like 90% of the way, or underestimate it. It's 90% of the way there. We need a little bit more. That either passes or it doesn't pass, right? Or if they fucked up and they made a really shitty park, or the money went somewhere else and it's just like not a park, now you're getting your money back through tax. There's a punishment. It wasn't done properly, so now you're getting some type of money back. How do you feel about a policy like that? I would consider this a left-leaning policy that allows communities to socially make things get done and hold people accountable for taxes.
I don't see
And
how
can
that's
lower.
I don't see how that's left wing. That is a financial incentive to drive government accountability, and it might not be inherently right wing, but I certainly don't think it's left wing because punishment style incentives like that generally are not aimed at government under left wing politics. So I disagree with your characterization that it's left wing, but I agree that it's got a lot
Well,
of
then let's take
quality
away
points to it.
labels.
Yeah,
Okay, let's take
that's
away
where I was
labels
getting.
on everything going forward then. All right, I won't say socialism, communism. I won't say left, right, nothing. Just policies, and I'll just want to spitfire some things if you don't mind, and just see
Sure,
if we
go
both
ahead.
agree, yes or no.
And for the
Okay,
record, the one you just outlined, I'd be in favor with some version of that. It has quality points to it.
okay. So there's that. Some sort of a okay. Here, another one. For people on Social Security and or like old age that they no longer have to pay property tax. You've paid your, to boost the economic incentive to be able to live in old age. No more property taxes on anybody in retirement.
Unacceptable. Property tax is morally evil. It should be abolished entirely.
Okay, but would you agree to no more property tax for elderly? If that's what like gets put, we're talking about.
If that's what I have to accept in the short term, yeah, sure, that's a step in the right direction.
But you think it should go further? Okay,
I
okay.
think I shouldn't have to pay rent to live in the country I was born into. It's morally reprehensible.
Okay. Should there be a minimum wage? Just blanket. Should there be one? We can go into the details
I've
of.
spent a lot. I can't answer that. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I still haven't decided my true feelings on that. It's a very complex question in my opinion.
All right. Let me throw my version of minimum wage out then. A minimum wage that is based off of census data of to the local region of what is required to have the basic necessity of if you work 40 hours a week at a job full time, that you should be able to have a studio apartment and a little bit of savings and food, of course, and water.
So let me repeat that just to make sure I understand. Your version of the minimum wage is I work a full time job and that guarantees that I can support myself with basic necessities.
Yes. The bare minimum necessities, and it how this is calculated is a state by state census data of what it requires to live there. So the minimum wage of Florida and Nevada and Washington will be three completely different minimum wages.
See, I'm 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 torn. I have a knee jerk reaction to say that could potentially be dialed in policy wise to make it viable, and then there's something in the back of my head that says it doesn't smell right. So it's something that we would have to dial into and be extremely specific, and we just don't have that kind of time.
Open to hearing it out, though. Okay. I'm trying to think of some other just rapid fire policy.
I
I
got
think
one. I got
Okay,
one
you
for
go.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
What are your thoughts on the current state of the prison system?
It's very bad for a lot of reasons. Okay,
Okay,
so
let me pitch you what I think should be done to fix it.
okay.
So I think that there's quite a few things. So I'll just rapid fire them as you say. No more lifetime inmates on death row. If they've diddled 5 kids or killed a bunch of people, put them against the wall, spend the 25 cents on a bullet, and be done with it. For the people that are going to be in there for extremely long stays, they should be put into a cognitive rehabilitation plan immediately with a qualified therapist and a social rehabilitation network that allows them to become functional in a job type setting so they can be immediately placed in some kind of a work program so that value can be extracted from them to pay for their presence in the prison so that they are not a drain on the taxpayer.
I
This
completely agree with that second half, not the first about killing. I think nobody should be killed by the prison system, no matter how bad it is, just purely for the fact that if you justify a killing from the government to the people, then all of a sudden every political dissident or anybody that the government wants is suddenly that thing, whether the proof is there or not. All of a sudden, like, if you have a opposition to a major political party that has overextended and has authoritarian reach, all of a sudden every other person is a pedophile, and they will find the proof.
I hear your argument, and it is the argument you're making is the only good argument against the death penalty, and I will concede it is a very good argument. Being that I have a Christian worldview, I believe that some evil is inexcusable and there needs to be a final consequence for a certain level of evil committed. But
Hmm.
your stance is 100% understandable, and I am very sympathetic to it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I just want to say everything you've said today has been very reasonable, very good questions. And I don't think you're stupid at all. I don't think that you're a bad person. I think you're very well educated. And I think that you have a lot of great ideas, and that we're just two people that have fundamentally different worldviews. My only request would be that I think that if a state wishes to vote in left policies, whether you agree on it or not, do you think, as somebody that believes in state rights, they should be able to do so?
Oh, of
If they
course,
want to, if Washington wanted to
of course.
socialize, hell, okay, cool. Now the next thing would be if a commune wanted to be communist, should they be able to have the right and freedom in America to make communes and live about the way that they wish to live about?
Oh yeah.
Example would be in, okay, cool. So that's my only pitch. And I don't think these people are stupid. They're not violent. I don't want us to have the USSR. Honestly, I think Cuba is the best example of a communist like regime, but even they're not the best, right? They're not like super good in many metrics outside of they have a high home ownership rate, and for the sanctions that are placed on them, they are doing okay with education and healthcare when you take in the factor of their inability to trade with major nations and the sanctions placed on them, and the that they're not helped with the disaster released. Um, Relief. Sorry, I think I slurred my word there. But the communism that I talk about and the socialism I talk about is that I think we should allow the expanse of co-ops, that if you, and that it should be easy to do so if you wish to do so, that there shouldn't be just because we're afraid of communism for so long that now we're going to keep these old age legislation that allows it or makes it difficult to accomplish that. It should be easy to make a co-op housing situation if that is what you want. It should be easy to make a co-op shopping center or whatever, as long as that is what the people want. No forcing, no manipulation, just what they want. And that I think that on a great mixed market is fine when you're talking about large scale economics, but a lot of us live small scale, which is why I call myself an anarcho communist, because if I think I should be allowed to have a piece of land that I take for me and my community, and that we, again, needs first, wants second, excess third, right? And I just, my appeal to you is not that these are the best ways to do things. I gave you the reasons why I think they would work, and you can either agree with it or not. I think you can see I'm not being unreasonable about my complaints and the reasons why I like things, but at least that you lend out the hand of, I will protect your freedoms to establish these things, and not because in that just because this is more communist and socialist in nature when you're looking at the origins of capitalism, not the advent of like North Korea, China, and Russia, but the origins of the writings and texts that I and others should not be discriminated for such things.
I agreed with everything you were saying right up until the last bit. Right up, literally the last like couple words.
That we shouldn't be discriminated for such things.
So yeah, so let me, and I say that somewhat in jest. Let me explain. So
Do you mind if I grab water because
Go ahead.
and pee
Go
before
ahead.
we like? Okay, thank you. We'll take a little bit of a like 2-minute break.
Okay. Well, while he's doing that, guys, I think I'll also go urinate. Empty my sack of pee.
We've been pretty active over here.
Oh, okay. Are you back? Is this debate ASMR? Yes, sir. How you doing, Sleepy? And how's everybody else doing in chat? I just want to do a chat roll call, a nice little vibe check with chat. How are y'all doing today? Are you guys enjoying this? Sorry that we haven't engaged with you as much as we probably should, but that's for like towards the end of things. I do want to have a time and opportunity for y'all to come in here. If he agrees, have you guys come in and, you know, focus on you guys a little bit more. I just wanted to make sure this was more of a one-on-one thing. And yeah, we'll get to you guys. But you're good? Stack, Sleepy, Marrow, everybody else that has come
Hey,
in.
Sleepy.
I just want to make sure everybody's having a good time in chat. It doesn't seem like anybody's been out of hand. Potato King, everybody. And I think this has been a productive conversation. I think, oh shit, bro, K-pop Nation over here throwing in the N-word. Yeah, no, thank you.
Oh, I missed that one. Was that
No,
in
it
your
was
chat?
blocked by Automon. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. K-pop Nation. That name sounds familiar. I think I've seen them in my chat.
You could just ban them, Sleepy.
What was it? Was he calling someone in the stream that?
No, they just said I can't read out the full thing, but they said a hostile message just in general to like my
Roger.
vibe check and
Roger.
threw in some slurs. So
Okay.
yeah.
Just unwarranted negativity. Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm down for the unwarranted negativity. People could be negative. My rules are pretty much I will not discriminate. In my Discord, the Neutral Waters. How is it a slur in that context, brother? Damn band.
Well, anyway, so there was you were saying something before we parted ways, or were you wrapping up with what you said?
I wrapped up. You were about to say something. My bad. I didn't
Okay.
mean to like derail it, but I had to piss, and I was like, all right, this is the time.
I don't blame you. What were your last remarks to bring me back to where I was?
Oh yeah, so my last remarks were basically that I think that in the United States that communists and socialists, as long as they're not advocating for
Oh, right,
authoritarianism,
right, right. And then you
centralization of
didn't,
power.
yeah,
Okay,
and then
yeah,
you
yeah,
didn't want to be discriminated by it because of the label. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
yeah.
okay, okay. So I cannot stress enough that a lot of what you say, I feel like you say things and you expect me to push back on them, and I don't know if that's because you've gotten pushback for those things from people who claim to be right wing, or
Hmm.
if you've just have a pre-built conception. But I am very much a man that is actually very serious about living by my principles, and my principles are this, and these are the um, espoused and held to conservative principles by people that are actually serious about making sure that word still means something. We believe in
Hmm.
small government. We believe in the power of the people. And we
Yes.
believe in individuals' rights to govern themselves however they see fit, as long as it is voluntary and not harming themselves. Excuse me, not themselves. If you want to a degree, if you want to harm
Others.
yourself,
The
yeah,
NAP, right?
yeah,
The non-aggression practice. I heavily
to
believe in the NAP.
to a certain extent. So everything you're saying about you should be allowed to do communes if you want to, and you should be allowed to put together communal systems without government interference. Not only do I agree with you, I praise that kind of thinking. Forming community systems where people that live in the same geographic region all get together and create systems that work for them in the context of their immediate culture and society is a good thing. I think it's good for society. It's good economically. It's generally almost universally a positive in both in principle and as far as I've seen in data. Okay, so
Hmm.
you will not get pushback on any of that from me. Where I will give you pushback is your marriage to the term communism, because a lot of the things you've prescribed and your insistence on the use of the label communist um, alludes to an ideology that has murdered hundreds of millions of people. And you do not need that label based on what I've heard, because so much of what you are saying is grasp within grasp with simple libertarian and a tinge of left wing policy flavoring here and there, but nowhere near full blown communism for the overwhelming majority of it. And so I
Well,
would.
I don't. I just want to say something real quick. I don't agree with making the entirety of the United States communists, but I want to have a communist commune. Like I personally
I
want to be
understand
able
what you're
to live in a
saying.
commune.
I,
Yeah.
I and I think I'm not sure you're catching my point. You don't need the
Mm.
word communist there. You can just say a commune, and you can say a high individual rights commune or a libertarian style commune or whatever you want.
Hmm.
Um,
Actually, I like
my
that. Let me write that down. Can you say that one more time? Hi.
high individual rights commune or libertarian commune.
It's commune. I'm not using libertarian because that implies capital. Under the commune I would live in, there'd be essentially a
You want to
limitation of
barter
capital.
you want as much barter and trade for goods and services as possible. I understand that. Okay,
Yeah.
so okay, fair enough.
I
But
do want to say that I agree with you, though. I agree.
you agree with what?
About not needing the label because Stack Ollie and I had this conversation the other day. He's not a communist, but he agrees with the vision that I'm painting for what I would like, and he actually would like the same thing as well. And we had a discussion of maybe it is time to just drop the labels because we can get into this next part as like the final thing before we like take people in if you're okay with that is that like I think that the whole economic models are going to have to change in the future anyway. That's going to be like a drastic, like, because that's predicting the future. So I wanted to leave that as like the last. But
Okay.
him and I were thinking of like, so Andrew Yang had a UBI proposal when he was running on his campaign, and while it did really well for left, like very left demographics, it did very poorly for moderate left to everything right of moderate left, right? He changed it to the terminology, the freedom dividend, and he went up like 30% in polls in far right areas by simply changing the name. Same principle, same concept. And then Alaska. Alaska doesn't say UBI, even though they do have a UBI. And they do have a redistribution of the profits of a publicly owned resource. Okay, so this is socialist in nature. Okay, so
is socialist,
what
yeah.
do they call it? Well, they call it the Alaskan. Here, let me get the name up so I don't fuck this up. I want to be as accurate as possible. Alaskan dividend. Okay, so they call it the permanent fund dividend, and it's for citizens. And I think this labeling of things, I think that a lot of stuff has been just stigmatized so much, right? I do wear the labels and they've helped me grow and be able to spread positive words and have like the whole reason of wearing the labels is to destigmatize it in society, not necessarily to be like, this is what we have to call it, just to destigmatize it. But I agree with you that maybe it is best to relabel these things, right? Because there's been so much propaganda on both sides about capitalism, socialism, and there's been so much like hate and so much divide that when you really like poll things and you just ask people, should we have this or have we that or that, we generally can come to at least a 60 to 80% consensus depending on what the policy is for single issue policies. And that's wonderful. But by saying that this is this or this is that, we do divide that a lot, which is why I do wear the labels to destigmatize it, but I also am in conflict because I agree with you about just relabeling things. It's probably easier.
Well, that is one area we disagree. Communism should not be destigmatized. The system, as outlined by Marx and followed through faithfully by many of his proponents, has led to catastrophic human suffering. It should not be destigmatized.
Okay, well, that's where we disagree because as someone that read through a lot of Marx's work and Engels and other visionaries afterwards, what the USSR and China and North Korea are doing is definitely not what was laid out in
It's
any
not
of
real
the original.
communism. You are literally the meme right now, but I'll forgive you.
But it's true. Like, okay, so if I said that I'm Christian and Christianity tells me to go fucking kill someone that's atheist, am I a Christian anymore? Is this Christianity?
Okay, I understand. I understand that argument, and that's no true Scotsman fallacy that you're alluding to. And here's what I would counter with that. It's not a good analogy, and here's why. There are many hundreds of millions of instances of peaceful Christians, despite extremist interpretations of the Bible that exist.
Mm-hmm.
There is not one large-scale interpretation of communism that has led to good results for the people that have been subsumed by it.
I agree with you. But I would say the majority of communists are peaceful. It's about the accumulation of power. I don't think there is any centralized government that accumulates that power, including the United States, that is peaceful. And if you're probably wondering, well, America's great. Our government ain't. And look at what we've done abroad.
Again,
in the Middle East,
you're
Latin
talking to a
America, Asia.
conservative. I'm not a simp for the government. You
Yeah.
gotta know who
Okay.
you're talking to. Our
Okay,
government
then-
sucks ass.
Yeah, so I think this is more of a problem because everybody goes, well, when you label something communist, look at like what the governments exist, and I think that is a fair argument. But then nobody talks about all the places that were labeled democracies and capitalists who murdered, enslaved, killed, military-industrial complex. You know, the things that like everybody is ready to point out Cuba, but nobody wants to talk about Brazil. Nobody wants to talk about like Syria. Nobody wants to talk about what is going on in capitalist countries that identify with the labels they like, because then it becomes a, oh no 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 no, right? So I think that the power is about centralization, a decentralization of power, and authoritarianism. And I do agree that the communist examples of these were horrendous in a lot of ways. And even in the ways where they economically did prosper a bit under communism, it doesn't make it right, because in the end, what they did was terrible. But a lot of there's way more, because there's more capitalist societies. It's easy to say, well, there's more capitalist societies that cause like violence. But when you look at the individual level, you can also see how on local communities, hyper-capitalism has harmed communities in various ways, which we've both already agreed on and said that could be legislated away in some way or form, right? So I just want to say that, like, yeah, while you were right about the communist powers being evil, I think that everybody likes to point to it when it's the other side, but not their own side, and just blatantly ignore all the examples of capitalism being used for evil to support dictators and war and stealing resources, promoting slavery, and such violence as this.
Okay.
And that most communists that I've talked to are not people that want what the USSR had, but are, as I forget the term for it, but there's a term that conservatives use that I thought was fucking funny, where it's like the idea of like, oh, I'm just a communist that wants to pick strawberries and trade my strawberries for wick baskets, right? Like, I think there's more people like that than the people that are like up against the fucking wall. Let's shoot them.
I'm not so sure about that, but I appreciate your idealism. I would contest the presumption that those things are results of capitalism. War existed long before capitalism. Humans engaging in power plays and extra-governmental alteration of states outside of their own, espionage, whisper campaigns to destroy governments, all of these things existed before capitalism. You can't honestly attribute those things to capitalism. In my estimation, capitalism is just an economic system. Humans are going to human regardless of how they're running the economy.
Okay, but then why can't you just apply the same to my side of the coin? Of that, why can't you apply? Yeah, why can't you just be like, well, communism is an economic belief system, and
because
before
it's not
communism,
an economic belief system.
You can boil it down to a lot of it being economics. You can tie philosophy into communism, yes, of like values and stuff, but you could do that for capitalism too, of like the values of freedom, the what do you call it, Darwinism and such like that, are ideals that you can feed into capitalism. But in the end, capitalism is a economic model. Yeah, it reflects certain beliefs. Same with communism. It's an economic model that, like everything else, reflects certain beliefs. I just think that it's unfair to single it out when, as you've mentioned, it's kind of like when people say like religion makes people more violent. It's like, no, people killed each other before religion. Whatever it is, whatever place it is, whether it's my economic model, my religion, my people, whatever, you will find a reason to kill and hurt other people. So I don't like just tying an economic system or anything to that incentivizes violence or is the cause of violence.
I think we could go round and round on that all night.
Yeah.
In a limited amount of time.
All right, we'll move past it.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, I think we have to agree to disagree for now, and you can go ahead and invite people in, and we can take questions.
Yeah. Can I get the last thing?
What
sorry.
was the last thing?
The last thing was that with AI, I do want to point out that everything we understand about economics and social life is going to be thrown out the window within the next few decades. So,
potentially,
like, I mean, yeah, there's a huge, not even potentially, I think there's a huge likelihood that with the advent of AI and how fast it's growing and how rapidly it's replacing workers in the economy and resources it's taking, that we're going to have to rethink economics and social life just in general. Like, I don't know what that is going to fully look like, but I think we can at least agree that there's probably going to be a huge rethinking of how things work, and then maybe the possibility of a new system that's not communist or capitalist coming from that, maybe. But at least I think we can agree that we have to radically start thinking about what does life look like with AI.
Oh yeah, of course there's anyone that would contest that would be presumably the very definition of regressive and stuck in their ways. I mean, of course, you have to think about the impact of new technologies. If history teaches us one thing, it's there's no closing Pandora's box. Once it's here, it's here.
Yeah. Yeah. So we agree on that. And do you have any like deeper thoughts on AI and how that's going to change economics?
I've spent a decent amount of time thinking about that, and in my humble opinion, I think, and this first part goes without saying, so I don't profess to be profound for this first part, but it can go one of two ways. It can go catastrophically right, or it can go catastrophically wrong. Of course, there is the middle of the road option, but that's no fun to talk about, so let's talk about the two extremes. Under the worst possible scenario, legislation fails to catch up with AI in time, or it is incompetently inadequate, both of which are highly possible. And what happens is corporations gain too much control over the AI marketplace too quickly, and it leads to a even more dystopian corporatocracy environment. And what has the potential to happen there is that corporations actually become so powerful that they are able to overthrow the government, and we become, at least some countries become true corporatocracies where the corporations are the government. Because with the power of AI on their side, they could very potentially achieve that level of power without too much difficulty. That's a worst case scenario. Best case scenario is either the technology is evenly developed across a number of hands, and so competition keeps the market fair, and or there is sufficient legislation, and we move into a golden age of low effort, high quality productivity for things that previously took many, many man hours for inconsistent levels of quality. So that would be things like doing accounting and writing extremely basic code and compiling databases. All of these things AI can do a million times faster than any human could ever be trained to do, even with the best software tools. And that would free up human labor to be spec'd into things that need to remain human specific, such as cooking and certain types of medical care, and other fields that have to have a human hand for various reasons.
All right. I agree with you on all of that. And before we like bring people in here, I just want to say I do feel like this has been a productive conversation. Even if like opinions aren't completely like swayed on everything, I think it is important to have this conversation to humanize other sides and have like these are the conversations we as people should be having to have some consensus of
Twitch could
and
use
semblance.
a lot more of you and a lot fewer Rampage Paul. I 100% agree.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I respect the hell out of you, man. And I hope you feel similar.
You are a you are someone who is worthy of at least the basic level of human respect. You have not dehumanized me. You have not made this an unpleasant experience. Yeah, I believe this was worth my time, and I appreciate your conduct and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me just throw out for everybody. This is who I'm talking to. If anybody doesn't know, I see we're getting a lot of viewers today. His name is If You're Feeling Adventurous. There's the shout out for him. If you want to go check out his channel and what he talks about. If you want to shout out yourself a little bit, I'm going to run one more time to the restroom before we take people. If you just want to like advertise yourself a little.
Yep, no problem. Caitlin, would you mind going to his stream and grabbing his username and giving him a shout out in our stream as well? and okay life. So yeah, everyone. I'll just go ahead and piggyback off a lot of what he said. I think the oh my god, Twisted. I think the conversation. I don't know if I would characterize it as productive because neither of us really got budged on anything. But maybe someone heard some things that that opened their perspectives a little bit. Maybe our audience benefited, and if one audience member benefited even a little bit, then it was obviously a productive conversation. So that's good. I would. I'm gonna pitch him something when he gets back, and yeah, don't really have anything else to go on a rant about, at least not at the moment. That AI Satan on Twitch. Well, we broke him once. I'm not here. I didn't know there was an AI Satan on Twitch. I knew about AI Jesus. What is he gonna do if I am feeling adventurous? I don't know. What do you want me to do if you're feeling adventurous? Thank you.
Alrighty, I'm back.
Right, welcome back. People in my chat, that's Anok. If you are so inclined, go give him a follow. He's certainly proven himself worthy of at least a certain amount of consideration.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I do have somebody in my chat. I don't know if you answered while I was gone, but I pinned a question where it says, it's from Casey Lee IRL, the creator of Ask Satan AI. They want to know, what do you think about AI Satan on Twitch as a religious person?
I think that this thing that atheists and genuine Satanists do, and I can only read it as antagonism and baiting, using the image of Satan and using it as sort of a haha, look what we're doing kind of a thing. Even if it is done with banal or non-malicious intent. Not to sound like an edgelord or anything, but you are simply playing with things that you do not understand. I believe that we are governed by principalities. I believe evil exists at a metaphysical level, and using the image of a thing you do not understand to goad people who genuinely wish the best for you is not advisable policy, in my opinion.
I think that's fair. What do you think about the fact that AI Jesus was... actually, first, what do you think about AI Jesus, and how do you feel that it's run by atheists?
I don't care who runs it as long as it is not a disrespectful representation, and based on the little bit of time I've spent with AI Jesus, I did not feel like it was intensely heretical or being used for the purpose of mockery. It seemed to take a pretty even-keeled approach towards the whole thing. Obviously, it does not meet the standard that Christ set. A machine could never mimic God, but I don't think they're doing it for the sole purpose of mocking Christians. I read it as a semi-respectable artistic endeavor.
Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna drop the link to Neutral Waters if you're down to moving on to the taking in people. I think the way that we should take people in is maybe have them come in for questions for both of us.
I can give you about 15 more minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so 15 minutes of questions for both of us. I'll drop the Neutral Waters link in my chat. Am I able to drop it in your chat?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, because I want to make sure it's not just my chat that gets a voice. I want your chat to also have a voice. Here's the link to Neutral Waters. Neutral Waters is a co-op owned Discord that is based around providing a neutral place where people aren't persecuted for their politics, their religion, race, anything like that. The rules generally are just be respectful, do not dox people, do not break TOS, do not threaten people, general common sense things. Do not harass people off of neutral waters if they wish to not be contacted. So, other than that, you guys can come in, have debates, have fun, and that's where we currently are having this conversation. I'll move us to a panel room so people can find us. Panel room 2 is where we'll be.
Are you gonna move me or should I move me?
I'll move you.
Okay.
Bam. Easy.
Okay.
Harmless.
Out of curiosity,
Can I get a fucking... Okay, yeah.
Oh my god. I don't know if you remember, but earlier you had someone say something about Boeing, and we ended up going
Oh,
past
shit.
it.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. That's lost on my.
Yeah,
That was me. That was me.
Oh well, lucky,
there you go.
lucky that. You want to hit me with it?
Yeah. Basically, I can't remember if it was Boeing that bought a company or a company bought Boeing or like they joined
Boeing
together
bought a
or
company.
Okay,
to
is that
merge
what?
them.
Okay. And basically, that's kind of where Boeing started to go downhill. They started to care more about basically streamlining, which basically means we don't give a shit about quality. Basically, we're just gonna push shit out the door and get more profits. And basically, a guy in 2020, there was a guy that he basically became CEO and to right the ship basically because it'd been bad for years. So that was 4 years ago that he came in. So it'd been bad years before that. So basically, and this guy he's not an engineer or nothing. This guy is basically a dude that continue basically his whole thing is he's a kind of guy that continues the streamlining process and making things cheap for profits basically. So it hasn't done shit. Basically, he's made things worse for Boeing than it already was. So yeah.
Was that just a comment you wanted to make, or was there a question somewhere?
Yeah, well, basically, it was that it doesn't that I was kind of refuting that the problem with Boeing was being subsidized by the government. With that whole thing. That's not the problem with Boeing. Boeing is they're basically not giving a shit about their quality, basically.
Two things can be true.
I'm just saying that's the main problem with Boeing is that they're not caring about the quality of their product anymore.
I mean, that very well may be a huge problem, but as a person who does not like government intervention in the market, I abhor any public dollars going to private institutions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I don't like. I'm not saying I don't. I do say I kind of agree with that in a sense. We shouldn't necessarily subsidize things. They don't need to be subsidized. In which case, Boeing, they're a big company. Why do we need to subsidize them? Pretty sure they can produce shit on their own and profit just fine.
Also, why are they still getting subsidies when they're fucking up left and right?
Exactly. Should we have shut down their subsidies? When they started fucking up years ago.
Same with Ford. Why are we subsidizing Ford? And here's another thing. Intel. We just subsidized the shit out of Intel. Gave them a lot of money, and they're moving their fucking factories abroad. Good shit, fucking Biden. Good shit also to Trump, who's also threw a bunch of subsidies and tax breaks and incentives at car companies, who then were incentivized to go fucking abroad. Again, fucking fantastic. I love politicians. Every single one of them, bro. They're so good. I love them. Which is why I agree with before we even focus on the problem of economics and changing economic needs, I think we need to band together to pretty much democratize the the government again. Like it's just not working for the people. I mean, we're talking age limits, term limits for every single branch of government. We're talking local councils need to come back. We're talking ranked choice voting. Fuck the first past the post system. We're talking not a winner takes all on the electoral college. We're talking some type of accountability needs to be held.
Yep.
Yeah. Is there anybody else that also wants to come in to ask any questions? Again, we're opening the floor on the neutral waters. I have it pinned in my Discord. I threw it in. The Discord link is pinned in my chat. I also threw it into Feeling Adventurouses. Or should I just call you Zach? Or like, what do people call
me
you?
Mr. Adventurous. You can call me Zach. I will answer to either.
All right, Mr. Adventurous. So in Mr. Adventurous's chat, I also threw a link in there. I welcome Discord questions or anything. We probably got like, what, 10 more minutes? Yeah, so if you guys have something to say and you want your voice heard, this is your opportunity to get your voice heard. We'll give them a little bit. Stack, well, since you're here, what was your take on the whole communism, communes, relabeling, a lot of stuff? Because I did have a conversation with you already on relabeling that I mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I think relabeling a lot of things can help because especially with like certain things that like people, like a large amount of people have a negative connotation with a certain word. Like they may not disagree with ideas. Like if you change the word, like if you give it a different name, they may actually agree. But because it has a certain name, and this goes with a lot of stuff, because it has a certain name, people don't like it. Even brands, like, you know, there's a lot of brands that like they will rebrand a product with a different name and they'll like repackage it, like they'll kind of like give it a new like box basically, like the actual box, like the thing that like this, like what it looks like to you, the products. They'll change it.
Yeah, rebrand.
Even though it's it's the same products, but yeah. It didn't do well, so they repackage it, redo stuff, and maybe make a couple tweaks, and you know, and then resell it basically. And then people actually want to buy it because, you know, it's just because people have a negative connotation with that particular thing.
Well,
and then they're like, I don't want that, and then they're like, I don't want that thing because of this.
maybe not even a negative connotation, just a complete lack of interest. You gotta. When you look at market research and look at the motivation behind repackaging, it's mostly apathy.
Interesting. I do have a suggestion for kind of like this kind of expands on the relabeling, but what do you guys think about not registering for a political party and just having it like everybody's technically their own independent person when they vote, and that any bill that is put forward is a single issue bill that does not have Democrat or Republican next to its name, and same with people that you're voting for. So like when you go to the polls, it's not Democrat, not Republican. So we just basically remove labels, not even relabel. We basically remove all the labels when it comes to voting.
I said that years ago.
Let me
should do all that.
pitch you something a step further. This is a thought I had, and I'm not married to it. It's just a thought I had. What if we abolish political parties?
Yeah, I said that years ago. I said that. That's
what I just basically said.
Yeah, just get rid of political parties, and you just have your policies.
Labels on legislation is not necessarily the same as abolishing the institution of political parties at a legislative level. So, I mean, one is moving down that road, and the other is the end destination of that road. So you are in favor of completely abolishing political parties?
Yeah, I would fucking go for it. I think that everything should be a single issue vote, single bill. Or if it's a bill that requires another bill, that it needs to have a direct comparison, like direct link between them of necessity, and voted on as in, yes, separately, but like kind of like a together. So if like one fails, it all kind of goes out, but like you can modify. So like, let's say there's a bill of, we want to build houses. Okay, so we're going to build more affordable houses. Yes or no? Okay, yes. Now, how we're going to build it is this way. You can vote no to that, and it won't proceed unless they pitch a better way forward. right? So, like, you can have multiple bills that are kind of strung together in that way, but as long as there's a way to reject a step until it gets reworked.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, right now, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, this party, they voted against this. Like, well, no, they voted against this other thing. They didn't vote for it because you had this other thing in there that they didn't agree with. It's not that they were voting against that thing that you're saying they're voting against. They're just voting against the other stuff that you threw in there that they don't agree with and don't want. And that gets a lot of like just BS thrown out there, and then you get a bunch of people, normal citizens that they'll believe that because they're like siding with a certain party, and so they just eat that up, basically, like, oh, well, they hate these people, or this group or whatever, and they voted against them, which isn't the case. It's not why they voted against it.
Hey, Caitlin, why did you time that guy out?
I didn't time him out. Maru did.
Okay, why'd Maru time him out?
Why'd you, I asked him why. That was my first thing. I was like, well, why'd you get timed out? I need to know. 'Cause we banned one person here. Actually, the only second person we've ever banned, and it was because they were just saying slurs. And while I do know there is mod abuse.
A while back, I banned someone in another friend's chat for saying the same word, and he's like, "Well, I'm black." It's like, well, Twitch doesn't know that.
Yeah.
It's like you're in chat. You're an anonymous person in chat. Like, so it's like it's like to protect the streamer. And originally, I just deleted the message. Like, I think I did ban him after that because he was just being insistent or whatever, just saying it. But it's like, it's like Twitch doesn't know that. You're just an anonymous person in chat with no photo of who you actually are or any proof of that. So to protect the streamer and not because, like, if you allow that word in your chat, that means the streamer is saying that's okay.
Yeah.
It's like that's why that's why you have to, like, get rid of stuff. You can't have stuff, even if you don't care. Like you could say I don't care, but you to protect yourself, in your channel, you kind of have to.
Yeah. And I anybody that claims that Zach would, like, ban or time someone out, like, for like no reason, I wouldn't believe, because I firsthand witnessed Zach crack down on people who were wrongfully banning people in his chat. So, like, Gorp, while I do agree with bullying Gorp, he is fun to bully. His mods were fucking slapping him around when he was trying to have a good faith conversation, and Zach stepped in and went, "Mods, stop doing that now." Right? He was like, "We gotta let him speak. He's being good faith right now. He's not doing anything bad. Let the man speak." And I think that was the first time, like I had watched you a few times before that, but I had no real leaning of how I felt. But, like, after seeing that, like, my respect for you went through the roof of, like, being able to call out your own mods and be like, "Guys, fucking chill."
Yeah, that's the problem. Sometimes mods get, like, overzealous and want to protect the streamer, and, like, oh, they're being a jerk. This person being a jerk. I need to protect ban.
Well,
it's like, bro, as long as they're not being, saying slurs and, like, stuff.
Well, to be fair, Gorp's been bad in his chat before.
As long as they're not saying anything that could get you in trouble.
I don't think my mods were trying to protect me. My mods, I have a bunch of rowdy good old boys as my mods, and they like to play kick the nuisance. And sometimes it's funny, and sometimes they take it too far, and I gotta tell them to knock it the fuck off.
See, I'll sometimes, like, mess with people like that, but like I'm doing it in the sense of like I'll do I'll delete their message as a joke, or, like, ban them and then unban them, like, immediately.
Yeah.
just to see what they say. Like, hey, what the hell?
I do have a question, though, since we're talking about Gorp and Casey was in stream. What is the status there? Let me get the tea. Are you in good standing with Gorp and Casey now, or do you still kind of not not in good standing because the first time I've talked to you, the first thing you said is that you would have a conversation with me because I seem to be good faith in chat, but you wouldn't talk if Gorp or Casey was there because I invited you onto a call with the three of us. But then since then, I think I've seen Gorp on one of your streams where you're on call. So is everything like, are we Gucci or is like, what's the deal with that?
I don't think you've seen Gorp on my stream. You might have seen Gorp watching some of my content because my understanding is he likes to do that. And I have no comment to offer on him commentating on my content. He's free to do that if he wishes. Here's my thing, and I don't want to get into a long conversation about it because I got work in the morning, but the position that I last heard Gorp espouse was that it is permissible to surgically and chemically alter children in the name of gender ideology as long as the parents are consenting. And that belief is evil. And I will not sugarcoat it, and I will not back away from it. It is non-negotiable for me, and I do not wish to associate with people that want to contest it.
I see. Now, when you mean children, is this also like 16 years old, or are we talking like 8, 9?
Anyone below the age of 18, and frankly, I think that gender transition, we need to have a discussion about outlawing it for anyone under 25 because your prefrontal cortex is not done developing until you're 25 or older.
I don't think that's an unreasonable stance to have. I do, Gorp also says, I've never been pro kids getting surgeries. My question was going to be like with puberty blockers, do you count that as like let's just say 16, because at 16, I think you're coming into adulthood and being able to make your own choices. Puberty blockers, 16 to...
Puberty
is that too young?
Puberty blockers are chemical castration and irreversible. They are unacceptable to administer to anyone other than a pedophile for the original purpose of chemically castrating him.
I never thought about chemically castrating pedophiles. That actually, that might be a good thing.
That's what those drugs were originally created for.
Interesting. I'm not super in on the science because, oh, 1 second. Sorry, I tripped over my mic. Or headset, sorry. I'm not super into, like, the data of, like, all of the trans stuff. I'm generally of just, like, when you're an adult, you can kind of do what you want to your body. Anything under being adult, I get very hesitant, and you need, like, really good evidence and explanations to do anything, right? So that's kind of where I fall on that, but I have no strong opinions at the moment, right?
Let me give you something you might want to look into, and you can form your strong opinions. Okay. Recently, I can't remember who leaked them, but someone on the inside of this organization... Are you familiar with the term WPATH?
No.
Okay. World... I can't remember what the anagram stands for, but basically it's the leading authority on transgender research and advocacy for transitioning of individuals, especially they've pioneered the children thing. And they had a bunch of internal documentation leaked, and the internal documentation proved that they know that these drugs are harmful. They know that they do not yield positive results. The same for the surgeries. And the internal documentation acknowledges that they are going to keep doing these horrible things to kids because there's a strong profit incentive. It is incredibly damning. It destroys the entire narrative around transing the kids. And it's, if you want to have an informed opinion, the WPATH leaks that happened a couple weeks back are very much necessary reading material.
All right, yeah, I'll definitely look into that because it's one of those things where I will admit I'm not fully educated on. So it's one of those things of I know enough to kind of have sort of a feeling at above 18, but when it comes to anything below 18, I'm completely in the dark. And I know that there's many claims out there, and it's just one of those things of there's so many problems in the world. It's hard to like know a little bit of everything.
I've always
yeah,
been
for sure.
I've always been 18. Like once you're 18, like you can kind of do it.
Yeah.
You kind of do somewhat whatever you want. You know.
18 to 21 has always been kind of like my range for, doing stuff. Like I agree, like,
Yeah.
guns. I can see guns being 21. That's fine, right? Because they're still 18-year-olds in high school and stuff like that.
Well, the thing is, like, if we're gonna have other stuff be 21, I think also maybe the military should be 21. You know. Like,
possibly.
If you can't personally buy a gun, why should we send you to war with a gun?
Yeah.
Before you can buy one legally, like that makes no sense.
But I also don't think we should ruin kids' lives for underage drinking or underage smoking pot or anything like that. It's one of those things of, slap a fine on them, make them, pay some money, learn their lesson, scare the shit out of them.
Or maybe some like what's it called? I can't think of it on the top of my head. Where you do community service. Yeah,
community service.
Yeah, do some community. Maybe like instead of being a fine or whatever, just do community service.
Yeah, and actually, like since we're like pivoting into that, and Zach, you don't have that much time. Would you be down for another conversation sometime about? It doesn't have to be anytime soon because I am booked out like next week and the week after. I'm hearing some stuff like I might be talking to like Stardust or her mods. We'll kind of see on that. But sometime in the near future, hopefully, I'd like to have a discussion with you about like family values, men's health and stuff like that. Cause I feel like that might be something from our conversation. You've kind of mentioned, certain things about community and family values. And I find it hard to like have a conversation with anybody about those topics. Nobody really wants to have the discussion about men's health, the importance of community, family, and
I'm 100% open to that conversation.
Yeah, so
men's health is kind of seen as like a joke.
I do want to address the Gorps thing. I did not allege that Gorp came out in support of surgically altering the kids. This is a direct quote or something close to a direct quote. If the two adults, being the parent and the doctor, consent, then there is sufficient consent to do the procedures, and that's. Like I said, that's pretty close to a direct quote. Caitlin, do you remember close to the direct quote?
Well, that's basically what he said. He said it is between two consenting adults, the parents and their doctors. Which is basically the same as saying it's between two consenting adults when a crackhead and her drug dealer decide that it's okay for her 5-year-old to have sex. So,
yikes.
Take that.
My wife is less willing to restrain the emotional.
Children cannot consent.
Children
that
consent.
Pretty well accepted that they can't consent.
I think it's coming out of a place of love, and of course, you guys have looked into this, so you guys have formed more educated opinions than I can offer on this conversation, which is why I'm staying neutral. Because while you were saying some stuff, I still need to look into it and verify myself before I, come to any super strong conclusion. But generally, I do not like us fucking with kids, like in most, almost everything. Right?
That's why I said earlier I can't remember his name that I mentioned. The the video where I think he's like the guy's like pretending to like be on the phone or whatever, and he shoots the dude that raped his daughter.
Yeah.
I agree with that, man.
Yeah, that was based, and he only got a limited amount of time for it too. Like the judge understood, and like didn't he get like 2 years of like at home monitoring or something like that in community service?
It's very minimal. There was another. I think there was like another one.
Away the pedophile in the airport.
Yeah.
It was a very light sentence for.
There was another one where the judge threw out the case completely.
Based. Yeah, but just a general take to kind of like preface what I would talk about with like communities and stuff is that I think that America has diluted communities. There's a few angles, and yes, I do have a capitalist, take on it, or we could just call it corporatism or whatever. Just like greed. We could just greed has also helped ruin these communities, and I think that it's one of the biggest things missing from our society, and it's the reason we're so alone. It's the reason that marriage and dating are suffering. It's the reason we have a lot of mass shootings and violence, and people just are generally very discontent, is because we're missing the one thing that was really like laid out in every fabric of life for us, and it's that we're a species that is meant to be communal and live together and interact with each other. They're called social species. Like guinea pigs are also social species, dogs, wolves, all that, right? Penguins. And we're stripping away that like slowly and surely, whether it be regulations that make it harder for people to buy houses together, or whether it be that work separates people, or that we're engaging in hedonist behavior that is dividing us. I think no matter what take you look at it, that the core aspect of what makes life fulfilling and strong is being stripped away, and nobody wants to talk about it. And then from a health perspective, I think that men are heavily suffering right now from every single angle. I think the right is fucking men and taking advantage of them. I think the left is neglecting men and pushing them away and being very harmful. I think that men in general are in a very bad place, and we need to have positive masculinity come back and show that it's okay to be strong. It's okay to have masculine traits. It's also okay to be to embrace feminine traits as a man and have positive femininity in your life. But like, we need to start, getting rid of this fatherless and motherless behavior and start bringing back community in this frickin' country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ed, one things I was
gonna have all of that when next we talk. You hit me up and let me know when you want to do it. I do want to hit you with one thing, and then I'm gonna hop off. Have you heard of a man by the name of James Lindsay?
No.
Okay. I want you, for your own education and your own widening of perspective, even if you end up not agreeing, I'm actually gonna send you a video or two of his that I want you to watch. They're long, so you'll have to find a time to set aside.
He looks familiar. He talked to Jordan Peterson, correct?
He did.
I think I've seen him before.
He did. Yes.
Okay, then yeah, I have seen this person before, just not by name. I didn't know him.
So I'm going to send you a video of his where he really dives deep into what Marx was actually saying, and I want you to give it a chance, okay?
I will. No, I'm not opposed to hearing. I think that if you have an idea, that you should be able to invite criticism and hear all forms of everybody without what they have to say first. Because if you have a good idea, it should stand up to scrutiny and being questioned.
Amen.
And that's what this is all about, man. Amen to you, and God bless. And I hope that there's good health for you, your wife, and I don't know if you have children, but them, and if not, your dogs. One's in the oven. There you go. Well, I hope good health and good outcomes for you and your soon-to-be family, man.
Thank you.
And I'll see you around. Everybody, again, let me just one more time. This has been If You're Feeling Adventurous. I honestly feel like this has been one of the best panels I've had, and has been a declaration of kind of what I want going forward. I hope you all have liked this. I will continue streaming and talking about some other topics, because I'm in a good mood. But yeah, we'll probably be changing topics, everybody in chat. But if you want to follow who's been talking, it's If You're Feeling Adventurous. Let me give them that shout out again. And we'll make sure to have. Oh, I can't. You have to wait 26 minutes, dude. Literally 1984.
Wow.
Who shouted out somebody so much that we can't freaking? Okay. Well, I'll just type it out. It's If You're Feeling.
Sleepy.
There you go. Sleepy put it in. Thank you. Based mod. Everybody give some love. Whether you agree with them or not, I think we need to make a place for people that have good values and are good people that are willing to have educated conversations. And that is exactly what this man is providing. So
I appreciate that. That's a surprisingly strong endorsement.
Hey, man, I've been silently watching you for a while and sometimes active in your chat. And I think I've seen enough of you to know that at least the way that you conduct yourself on Twitch is good. Is something to strive for. So
wait a minute, you're watching him?
Yeah, I'm watching him.
I don't know about good. I think I have a long way to go, but I try, so I appreciate
Good
it.
compared
Thank
to
you.
the other stuff. All right, you're not in the mirror like with your ass up in the air with the mirror behind you as you're jiggling it and you're ASMRing into the mic.
Hey, I got some cake. If I marketed myself right, I could make that niche work for me.
Hell yeah.
Who's the taco fella?
Get that OnlyFans.
The taco
Oh,
fellow?
the taco fellow. That's so racist. That's my friend. All right.
Yeah. The fuck.
He's a citizen of America.
Hey, taco bros are people too.
Bro literally has tacos. Yeah. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
I gotta pee again because I drank 3 freaking maybe 4 water bottles this whole time and just been downing like soda as well. So I've just been
Yeah, so
man.
you've been working on the the cleaning of the bladder.
Yep. So I'm gonna play this alien taco song that was AI generated between Stack and I, and then as I use the restroom.
All
But
right, everyone.
yeah, I think we're
It's
done
been
here.
good and okay.
It's
Look
been
forward
good, man.
Talking to you again.
Same. I'll hit you up in the DMs. All right.
Alrighty.
Man. Have a good one.
Okie dokie. All right, guys. I am pretty happy with how that went. I think that was probably more productive than not, for sure. Twisted, I appreciate that, man. I thought it was a decent conversation too. I really like. I would definitely implore him to consider abandoning the communist thing. So it's like, dude, you're not, as far as I can tell, you're not strictly speaking a commie. You seem like a old school hippie liberal, dude. Like,
Yeah.
like you want a barter and trade system where you can have more control over the value of your labor. That's not necessarily communism. Although I certainly understand how some people would make the argument it is.
We were right.
I wouldn't call that a debate. We were having a conversation, and it wasn't adversarial in nature. Run, either a lie is so weak that Paul, a mortal, was able to defeat his godhood, or the Bible is true and we can conclude they are servants of false prophets. Exactly.
Yep.
That's that. I don't know if you're still there, Mr. Muslim sir, but you really are in a tight situation with the Quran and the Bible argument, because if the Quran is true, the Bible is true. And if the Bible is true, the Quran is false. So you're really kind of fucked on that one. So
Yeah.
it is odd that it is easier to talk to communists in here than liberal. Dude, that well, a lot of the time, in my experience, up until that conversation, the liberal Trump derangement syndrome has had a one-to-one crossover with the commies. That is my first interaction with a commie that has not reflected that. But I mean, we
Except for hypnosis or whatever.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
The wet fire.
The hypnosis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. He's got the gnosis.
Yep.
Yeah. He might, that might be a good person to get on a panel with.
With and okay.
And okay, and I could see that being productive. And calm and vigilante. See, I don't know them. At least not off the top of my head. Alright, guys. We're going to raid Filthy Jester. Thank you all for sticking around for the whole thing. That was a pretty decent conversation, in my opinion. Filthy Jester is a lovable clown, as his name might indicate. I'm not going to raid in his chat because I am not retarded. You too, Twisted. Thanks for being here. All my mods, thanks for being here and doing the thing. And, you know, to everyone that comes and supports the adventure, you know how much I appreciate that you consider me worth your time. It really does mean a lot. I don't know why I'm doing the thing.
The thing with the hands.
I'll see you on the next adventure.